Welcome to the audiobook Insights for Never Eat Alone and Other Secrets to Success, One Relationship at a Time by Keith Ferrazzi with Tal Raz. We begin with the introduction. Connecting to change the world. It is a common misconception that networking is a calculated, self-serving, and often manipulative pursuit. We picture the slick salesman working a room, handing out business cards like a dealer at a blackjack table, eyes darting over your shoulder to see if there is someone more important standing behind you. This image is the antithesis of what Keith Ferrazzi proposes in this groundbreaking manual on human connection. To understand the soul of this book, we must first go back to a golf course in Latrobe, Pennsylvania. This is where Ferrazzi's story begins, not in a boardroom, but as a young caddy. He was the son of a steel worker and a cleaning lady. They were people of immense character and hard work, but they lacked one specific form of currency: access. Ferrazzi recalls observing the wealthy members of the country club. He saw them helping one another. He watched how they found jobs for each other's children, how they lent money, and how they pooled their influence to solve problems. It dawned on him that their success was not merely a result of individual brilliance. It was a result of their community. They were members of a club, both literally and metaphorically. This early observation led to a pivotal realization for Ferrazzi. Poverty is not just a lack of financial resources, it is also the lack of a network. It is isolation. His father, recognizing this limitation, decided to reach out. In a move of profound humility and courage, Ferrazzi's father approached the CEO of the steel company where he worked, a man named Alex McKenna, and asked for advice on how to get his son a better education. That single conversation, that bridge built between a laborer and a CEO, changed the trajectory of Ferrazzi's life.
It secured him a scholarship to a prestigious prep school, which led to Yale, then Harvard Business School, and eventually to the youngest partnership in Deloitte's history. But this book is not an autobiography. It is a methodology derived from those life experiences. The core thesis Ferrazzi presents in this introduction is that success is fundamentally a team sport. The myth of the self-made man is just that, a myth. In the modern economy, where information moves at the speed of light and job security is a relic of the past, your network is your net worth. But, and this is the critical distinction, networking is not about keeping score. It is not about trading favors. Ferrazzi argues that real networking is about intimacy and generosity. It is about making other people successful. The most connected people, the true masters of this art, are actually the most generous people. They are the ones who are constantly asking, "How can I help you?" He sets the stage for a shift in mindset. We are moving away from the networking of the 1980s and 90s, which was often transactional and cold, towards connecting in the digital age. Connecting is driven by a genuine interest in other people. It requires you to be interesting, to have content, and to have a desire to make the world smaller and more manageable for those around you. Throughout this journey, we will explore the specific mechanics of how to build this kind of circle. We will look at the mindset required to start, the skill set needed to execute, and the discipline to maintain it. Ferrazzi admits that he collects people the way others collect stamps or vintage cars, but he doesn't collect them to use them. He collects them to love them, to help them, and to facilitate connections between them. He calls this creating a community of your own making. As we proceed into the first section of the book, prepare to abandon the idea that you can succeed alone.
The path to greatness is paved with the relationships you build, the tables you share, and the generosity you extend. Narrator, Section 1, The Mindset. Chapter 1, Becoming a Member of the Club. We begin our journey into the mindset of a master networker by confronting a universal human anxiety, the fear of being on the outside looking in. Keith Ferrazzi opens this section by acknowledging the existence of the velvet rope. In every industry, every social circle, and every career path, there are insiders and there are outsiders. The insiders seem to have it all. the access, the information, the opportunities, and the support. The outsiders, meanwhile, are left pressing their noses against the glass, wondering how to breach the barrier. Ferrazzi takes us back to his first semester at Yale University to illustrate this divide. Here was a young man from a working-class background, suddenly dropped into an environment steeped in old money, legacy names, and unspoken social codes. He felt the acute sting of class distinction. He saw peers who seemed to glide through life, their paths smoothed by the connections of their parents and the history of their families. For many, this disparity breeds resentment. It is easy to look at the club, whether it is a literal country club or the C-suite of a corporation, and decide that the game is rigged. It is easy to adopt a cynical view that says, I will just keep my head down, work hard, and ignore the politics. Ferrazzi argues that this reaction, while understandable, is a career-limiting mistake. To succeed, you must stop seeing the club as an enemy fortress and start seeing it as a community you have the power to join and eventually lead. But how does one become a member when they have no prior claim? The answer lies in a fundamental shift in perspective regarding what a network actually is. Ferrazzi realized that the club was not defined by the walls of a building or the size of a bank account.
It was defined by a web of mutual obligation and support. The people inside the club were not necessarily smarter or more talented than those outside. They simply operated within a system of trust and reciprocity. This brings us to the core concept of the chapter. You do not gain access to the club by asking for permission. You gain access by finding a way to be helpful. Ferrazzi recounts his involvement with the Sigma Chi fraternity at Yale. At the time, he was not the prototype of the socially dominant fraternity brother. Yet he recognized that the fraternity was a microcosm of the larger world. It was a network. Instead of just trying to fit in by mimicking the behavior of others, he looked for where the organization was broken and sought to fix it. He took on responsibilities no one else wanted. He worked to add value to the group. By doing so, he triggered the law of reciprocity. This is a deep-seated psychological principle that Ferrazzi returns to often. When you help someone or when you contribute to the health of a group, you create a psychological debt. The group naturally wants to bring you closer, to include you, and to repay that effort. The detailed lesson here is that you must build the club yourself if you cannot find one to join. Ferrazzi did not wait for an invitation to the tables of power. He set his own table. He realized that if he could become a connector, someone who brings valuable people together, he would automatically become a member of every circle those people belong to. This chapter challenges the listener to identify the clubs they feel excluded from. Is it the senior management team at your office? Is it the thought leaders in your industry? Ferrazzi warns against the Lone Ranger mentality. In Western culture, specifically in America, we idolize the solitary hero, John Wayne, the cowboy, the individualist who needs no one.
We are taught that asking for help is a sign of weakness, and that pulling yourself up by your bootstraps is the only honorable way to succeed. Ferrazzi dismantles this myth entirely. He asserts that the self-made man is a fiction. No one succeeds alone. Behind every great leader, artist, or entrepreneur is a team of mentors, supporters, and peers who opened doors and provided safety nets. Therefore, becoming a member of the club requires humility. You must admit that you need others. You must be willing to be vulnerable enough to say, I cannot do this by myself. But simultaneously, it requires audacity. You must be bold enough to believe that you have something to offer people who are seemingly above you. You must believe that your energy, your intellect, and your willingness to serve are currencies as valuable as money or status. In summary, Chapter 1 lays the philosophical foundation for the rest of the book. The world is not a meritocracy in a vacuum, it is a relationocracy. To win, you must be a citizen of this world. You cannot stand on the sidelines. You must cross the velvet rope, not by crashing the gate, but by proving that the party is better when you are in the room. Narrator Section 1. The Mindset. Chapter 1. Becoming a member of the club. We began our journey into the mindset of a master networker by confronting a universal human anxiety, the fear of being on the outside looking in. Keith Ferrazzi opens this section by acknowledging the existence of the velvet rope. In every industry, every social circle, and every career path, there are insiders and there are outsiders. The insiders seem to have it all: the access, the information, the opportunities, and the support. The outsiders, meanwhile, are left pressing their noses against the glass, wondering how to breach the barrier.
Ferrazzi takes us back to his first semester at Yale University to illustrate this divide. Here was a young man from a working-class background, suddenly dropped into an environment steeped in old money, legacy names, and unspoken social codes. He felt the acute sting of class distinction. He saw peers who seemed to glide through life, their paths smoothed by the connections of their parents and the history of their families. For many, this disparity breeds resentment. It is easy to look at the club, whether it is a literal country club or the C-suite of a corporation, and decide that the game is rigged. It is easy to adopt a cynical view that says, I will just keep my head down, work hard, and ignore the politics. Ferrazzi argues that this reaction, while understandable, is a career-limiting mistake. To succeed, you must stop seeing the club as an enemy fortress and start seeing it as a community you have the power to join and, eventually, lead. But how does one become a member when they have no prior claim? The answer lies in a fundamental shift in perspective regarding what a network actually is. Ferrazzi realized that the club was not defined by the walls of a building or the size of a bank account. It was defined by a web of mutual obligation and support. The people inside the club were not necessarily smarter or more talented than those outside. They simply operated within a system of trust and reciprocity. This brings us to the core concept of the chapter. You do not gain access to the club by asking for permission. You gain access by finding a way to be helpful. Ferrazzi recounts his involvement with the Sigma Chi fraternity at Yale. At the time, he was not the prototype of the socially dominant fraternity brother. Yet, he recognized that the fraternity was a microcosm of the larger world. It was a network. Instead of just trying to fit in by mimicking the behavior of others, he looked for where the organization was broken and sought to fix it. He took on responsibilities no one else wanted. He worked to add value to the group. By doing so, he triggered the law of reciprocity. This is a deep-seated psychological principle that Ferrazzi returns to often. When you help someone, or when you contribute to the health of a group, you create a psychological debt. The group naturally wants to bring you closer, to include you, and to repay that effort. The detailed lesson here is that you must build the club yourself if you cannot find one to join. Ferrazzi did not wait for an invitation to the tables of power. He set his own table. He realized that if he could become a connector, someone who brings valuable people together, he would automatically become a member of every circle those people belong to. This chapter challenges the listener to identify the clubs they feel excluded from. Is it the senior management team at your office? Is it the thought leaders in your industry? Ferrazzi warns against the Lone Ranger mentality. In Western culture, specifically in America, we idolize the solitary hero, John Wayne, the cowboy, the individualist who needs no one. We are taught that asking for help is a sign of weakness, and that pulling yourself up by your bootstraps is the only honorable way to succeed. Ferrazzi dismantles this myth entirely. He asserts that the self-made man is a fiction. No one succeeds alone. Behind every great leader, artist, or entrepreneur is a team of mentors, supporters, and peers who opened doors and provided safety nets. Therefore, becoming a member of the club requires humility. You must admit that you need others. You must be willing to be vulnerable enough to say, I cannot do this by myself. But simultaneously, it requires audacity. You must be bold enough to believe that you have something to offer people who seemingly above you. You must believe that your energy, your intellect, and your willingness to serve are currencies as valuable as money or status.
In summary, Chapter 1 lays the philosophical foundation for the rest of the book. The world is not a meritocracy in a vacuum. It is a relationocracy. To win, you must be a citizen of this world. You cannot stand on the sidelines. You must cross the velvet rope, not by crashing the gate, but by proving that the party is better when you are in the room. Narrator, Chapter 2. Don't keep score. In this chapter, Keith Ferrazzi attacks one of the most pervasive and destructive myths about networking, the idea that relationships are a finite transaction, a tit-for-tat exchange, where you only give if you expect to receive something of equal value immediately in return.
Ferrazzi calls this the scorekeeping mentality, and he identifies it as the primary reason most people fail at building meaningful connections. Imagine a ledger. On one side, you have favors given. On the other, favors received. The scorekeeper constantly checks this ledger. If they do something for you, they are immediately tapping their foot, waiting for the payback. If the ledger doesn't balance, they grow resentful and stop giving. Ferrazzi argues that this is a poverty mindset. It assumes there is a limited amount of value in the world, a fixed pie. If I give you a slice, I have one less slice. The master networker, however, operates from a mindset of abundance. They believe the pie gets bigger the more you slice it. Ferrazzi introduces a critical distinction here. Networking is not about bartering, it is about farming. When you farm, you plant seeds, you water them, you fertilize the soil. You do not stand over the seed screaming at it to grow. You understand that the harvest comes later, and often from unexpected places. You might help person A, and years later, person B, who knows person A, opens a door for you. The return is rarely linear, and it is rarely immediate. Ferrazzi emphasizes that you must be willing to pump the pump. He uses the analogy of an old-fashioned water pump.
You have to pump the lever vigorously for a long time before any water flows. Most people pump a few times, see no water, and give up. The successful connector pumps and pumps, confident that the water is rising even if they can't see it yet. This leads to a practical rule: give without expectation. This sounds noble, almost religious, but Ferrazzi grounds it in hard-nosed pragmatism. In the modern economy, social capital is built through generosity. When you help someone without asking for anything, you demonstrate strength and confidence. You signal that you have resources to spare. This makes you attractive. People want to be around those who add value, not those who extract it. Ferrazzi details the concept of the relationship bank account. Every time you help someone, you make a deposit. Every time you ask for a favor, you make a withdrawal. If you try to withdraw before you have deposited, you bounce a check. But if you have built up a massive balance of goodwill through years of selfless giving, your credit is virtually unlimited. He shares stories of how he built his own career by constantly asking himself, "How can I help this person?" long before he needed anything from them. He would clip articles he thought people would like. He would introduce two people who could do business together, stepping aside to let them profit, asking for no finder's fee. However, there is a nuance here that Ferrazzi is careful to explain. Don't keep score does not mean let people walk all over you. It does not mean being a martyr. It means you stop tracking the microtransactions of daily life. You trust that the macro equation of your life will balance out in your favor if you are a source of value to others. He warns about the networking jerk, the person who is clearly faking generosity to get something. Humans are incredibly adept at detecting inauthenticity. If your giving feels calculated, it will be rejected. The only way to fake sincerity is to actually be sincere. The chapter concludes with a call to action. Start today. Do something for someone in your circle without them asking, and without any expectation of a return. Send a book. Make an introduction. Share a piece of critical information. Throw away the scorecard. When you stop worrying about who owes whom, you free yourself to build relationships that are deeper, more resilient, and ultimately more profitable than any transactional deal could ever be. Narrator, Chapter 3. What's your mission? We now move from the philosophical foundation of generosity to the strategic bedrock of success: focus. Keith Ferrazzi begins this chapter with a blunt truth: you cannot hit a target you do not see. Many people view networking as a scattershot activity. They go to cocktail parties, hand out cards to everyone, and hope that one of those random contacts will eventually lead to something good. Ferrazzi argues that this is not networking, this is socializing. While socializing is pleasant, it is not a strategy for career acceleration. To build a powerful network, you must first define a powerful mission. Ferrazzi introduces a concept he calls the blue flame. This is the point of convergence where your passion and your ability intersect. Imagine a candle flame. The blue part at the base is the hottest, most intense part of the fire. In your life, the blue flame is found where your deep intrinsic interests meet your actual talents and the market's needs. Finding this blue flame is crucial because networking is hard work. It requires early mornings, late nights, and constant follow-through.
If you are pursuing a path solely for money or prestige, but you lack genuine passion for it, you will eventually burn out. Your insincerity will leak through in your conversations. But when you are operating within your blue flame, your enthusiasm is infectious. People are naturally drawn to those who are on a mission they believe in.
So, how do you find this mission? Ferrazzi suggests a rigorous process of introspection. He advises making a list of your dreams and goals, not just professional ones, but personal and spiritual ones too. What would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? What activities make you lose track of time? Once you have identified your blue flame, you must translate it into actionable goals. Ferrazzi is very specific about the methodology here. He promotes the creation of a relationship action plan, or RAP.
Most people write business plans. Some write life plans. Ferrazzi teaches us to write a relationship action plan because, as we established in the introduction, you cannot achieve your goals alone. Every goal you have requires the assistance, permission, or collaboration of others. Here is the minute-by-minute breakdown of how to construct a RAP as detailed in this chapter. First, set your goals in 3 time horizons. 1. Short-term goals, what you want to achieve in 90 days. 2. Mid-term goals, what you want to achieve in 1 year. 3. Long-term goals, what you want to achieve in 3 years. Ferrazzi warns against planning too far beyond 3 years in the modern age, as the world changes too rapidly. Second, for every single goal, you must identify the people or the types of people who can help you get there. For example, if your 3-year goal is to become the vice president of marketing at your firm, who holds the keys? It might be your current boss. It might be the CEO. It might be a mentor outside the company who can teach you the skills you are missing. It might be a headhunter who knows the landscape. You write these names down next to the goal. Now your abstract ambition has concrete targets. You are no longer just trying to get ahead. You are specifically trying to build a relationship with John, the CEO, and Sarah, the industry expert. Third, look at the people you have listed. Do you know them? If yes, how can you deepen the relationship? If no, how can you get introduced to them? This process transforms networking from a vague anxiety into a checklist of execution. It gives you a filter. When you are invited to an event, you can ask, does attending this help me connect with the people on my relationship action plan? If the answer is no, you can politely decline. This protects your time. Ferrazzi also emphasizes the importance of writing this down. A mission that exists only in your head is just a daydream.
When you commit it to paper, you make a contract with yourself. He concludes this chapter by addressing the fear of narrowing your options. Many people hesitate to define a mission because they are afraid of choosing the wrong one. Ferrazzi assures us that a mission is not a prison sentence. It is a vector. You can change direction later, but you cannot move forward if you are standing still, paralyzed by too many choices. By the end of Chapter 3, the listener should understand that the skill set of networking, which we will cover in Section 2, is useless without the mindset of a clear mission. You need to know what you want before you can ask the world to give it to you. Narrator. Chapter 4. Build it before you need it. There is a phone call that every successful person dreads. It usually happens on a Tuesday or Wednesday morning. An old acquaintance, someone they haven't heard from in 3, maybe 5 years, suddenly pops up on caller ID. They pick up, and after 30 seconds of awkward, forced pleasantries, the truth comes out. I just got laid off, or I'm looking for funding, or I'm in a bit of a jam. Keith Ferrazzi opens this chapter by identifying this moment as the cardinal sin of networking. If you wait until you are unemployed to start networking, you have already failed. The core principle here is an ancient one. You must dig the well before you are thirsty. Ferrazzi explains the psychology behind this. When you reach out to people only because you have an immediate, urgent need, you are not networking, you are begging. You are asking for a withdrawal from a bank account where you have made no deposits. The person on the other end of the line can smell the desperation. It makes them uncomfortable. Even if they want to help, the dynamic is unbalanced. You are the supplicant, and they are the benefactor. It is a weak position to be in. But consider the alternative.
Imagine you have spent the last 3 years checking in on that person, sending them articles relevant to their interests, congratulating them on their promotions, and perhaps introducing them to a potential client, all when you needed absolutely nothing. Now, when you lose your job and you make that call, the dynamic is entirely different. You are a friend. You are a valued member of their tribe. They are not just willing to help, they are eager to help. They feel a sense of duty to protect you because you have invested in them. Ferrazzi emphasizes that relationships are living, breathing things. They require time to mature. Trust is not a switch you can flip. It is a plant that grows slowly. You cannot cram for a relationship the way you cram for a college exam. This chapter attacks the common excuse, "I don't have time to network right now, I'm too busy working." Ferrazzi argues that this is a dangerous fallacy. Relationship building is not something you do in addition to your work. It is your work. If you are head down at your desk, ignoring the world around you, you are making yourself vulnerable. You are relying entirely on your current employer or your current skills, both of which can become obsolete overnight. He provides a roadmap for building it before you need it through consistency and discipline. This isn't about going to a gala every night. It is about the small, incremental habits. It is making one phone call a day on your commute home just to say hello to an old contact. It is sending one email a week to someone you admire just to compliment their recent work. It is using the fringe hours, breakfasts, lunches, quick coffees, to maintain visibility. Ferrazzi calls this staying top of mind. The goal is to ensure that when an opportunity arises, a new job opening, a board seat, a hot investment, your name is the first one that pops into the decision-maker's head.
If they haven't seen or heard from you in a year, you do not exist in their mental landscape. The chapter also touches on the concept of audacity in preparation, which leads into the next chapter. You have to be willing to build bridges to people who seem irrelevant to your current job, but might be crucial for your future career. You are building an insurance policy. He concludes with a stern warning. The perceived security of a steady paycheck often lulls people into complacency. They stop hustling. They stop reaching out. Then, when the market turns, they are left standing alone. Ferrazzi's mandate is clear. Start today. Even if you are the CEO, even if you just got a promotion, even if you are swamped with work. Reach out to 3 people today with zero agenda other than to strengthen the bond. That is how you build a safety net that will catch you when you fall, and a trampoline that will bounce you higher when you are ready to jump. Narrator Chapter 5. The Genius of Audacity. If the previous chapters built the foundation and the strategy, this chapter addresses the fuel required to move the engine: courage. Keith Ferrazzi opens Chapter 5 by confronting the invisible wall that stops most people from ever starting. It isn't a lack of skill, and it isn't a lack of opportunity. It is fear, specifically the fear of rejection. He calls this chapter the genius of audacity to highlight a specific quality he observed in the most successful people he has known. They simply have the nerve to ask. Ferrazzi returns to his childhood to illustrate this. He reminds us of the moment his father, a steelworker, asked the CEO of the company for a meeting. That was an act of supreme audacity. By social standards, it was out of line. But because his father dared to cross that line, the entire trajectory of the family changed. The core lesson here is that the world is much more malleable than we think.
We tend to believe there are strict rules governing who can talk to whom. We believe that if we reach out to a famous author, a CEO, or a celebrity, we will be ignored, or worse, ridiculed. Ferrazzi argues that this fear is almost entirely hallucinated. He reveals a secret about the super-connected and the powerful. They are often the loneliest people in the room. They are surrounded by subordinates who are afraid of them, or sycophants who want something from them. They rarely encounter people who approach them with genuine, bold curiosity and a desire to connect as equals. When you act with audacity, you differentiate yourself immediately. You signal that you believe you belong in the room. However, Ferrazzi distinguishes clearly between audacity and arrogance. Arrogance is presumptuous. It demands attention without offering value. It is loud and self-absorbed. Audacity is courageous. It creates opportunity out of thin air, but it is often done with respect and charm. He provides a practical framework for developing this audacity muscle. Like any muscle, it creates micro-tears when you use it, but it grows back stronger.
He suggests starting small. If you are at a conference, don't just talk to the people you know. Walk up to the keynote speaker after they leave the stage. If you are in an elevator with a senior executive, don't stare at your shoes. Say hello, introduce yourself, ask a thoughtful question. Ferrazzi introduces the concept of the soft ask. You don't lead with a heavy request, you lead with engagement, but you must be willing to initiate. He points out that most people are waiting to be chosen. They are waiting for someone to tap them on the shoulder and say, "You are ready." The audacious person chooses themselves. He also tackles the psychology of failure in this chapter. What happens if you reach out and get rejected? What if you invite a mentor to lunch and they say no? Ferrazzi's answer is simple. So what? You are in the exact same position you were before you asked. You haven't lost anything. But if they say yes, you have gained everything. The upside potential is infinite. The downside is zero. The chapter is filled with anecdotes of Ferrazzi's own cold calls and bold moves, situations where he had no business succeeding, except that he was the only one brave enough to try. He discusses how he used to cold call influential people by finding their phone numbers and simply dialing. He learned that gatekeepers can be bypassed or charmed, and that directness is often respected. Ultimately, the genius of audacity teaches that your network is limited only by your willingness to experience a moment of awkwardness. If you can tolerate the discomfort of the ask, you can access worlds that others assume are closed off. You must accept that you have the right to be there. You must accept that your mission is important enough to justify the interruption. Chapter 6. The Networking Jerk. We conclude the first section of our journey, the mindset, with a necessary warning.
If you take all the advice from the previous chapters, if you build a mission, cultivate audacity, and act with persistence, but you lack the fundamental component of this final chapter, you will fail. Not only will you fail, but you will also become a pariah. Keith Ferrazzi devotes Chapter 6 to the archetype everyone hates, the networking jerk. We all know this person. You meet them at a cocktail party. They shake your hand, but their grip is loose. They smile, but their eyes are not on you. They are darting over your shoulder, scanning the room for someone more important, more famous, or more useful. You are merely a placeholder, a stepping stone, or an obstacle. This person sprays business cards like confetti. They work the room with the mechanical efficiency of a vacuum cleaner, sucking up contacts without ever making a genuine connection. They are the schmoozers. Ferrazzi is brutally honest here. He acknowledges that because he is known as a master networker, some people assume he is the king of schmoozers. He admits that in his youth, driven by insecurity and ambition, he sometimes crossed that line, but he learned the hard way that this approach is toxic. The central thesis of this chapter is that intent matters. The difference between a superconnector and a networking jerk is not in the activity, it is in the motivation. The jerk meets people to see what they can get. The connector meets people to see what they can give. Ferrazzi explains that humans have a highly sensitive, innate radar for authenticity. We can smell a fake from a mile away. When someone pretends to be interested in us, but is actually calculating our net worth or our utility to their career, we feel devalued. We feel used. And once someone feels used, they will never trust you. Without trust, there is no network.
There are two specific behaviors Ferrazzi highlights as hallmarks of the jerk. First is the utilitarian approach. This is the person who is only nice to those who can help them right now. They treat assistants, waiters, and juniors with disdain, while fawning over bosses and celebrities. Ferrazzi warns that this is strategic suicide. Today's assistant is tomorrow's gatekeeper, or next year's CEO. Character is revealed in how you treat people who cannot do anything for you. Second is the lack of deep listening. The networking jerk loves to hear themselves talk. They interrupt, they brag, they drop names constantly to inflate their own status. Ferrazzi argues that the most charming people in the world are not the best talkers, they are the best listeners. They make you feel like you are the only person in the room. So, how do you avoid becoming the jerk? You must focus on the substance, not the form. Ferrazzi advises that if you are tired, or if you are not in the mood to be genuinely curious about other people, you should stay home. It is better to miss an event than to attend it with a mercenary attitude. One bad interaction can tarnish your reputation for years. News of a user travels fast in any industry. He also touches on the concept of social polish. While manners and etiquette are important, they are just the packaging. If the box is empty, if there is no genuine empathy or intellectual curiosity inside, the packaging doesn't matter. You cannot fake sincerity for long. As we close out Section 1, Ferrazzi wants to leave us with this thought. The mindset of a master networker is a paradox. You must be ambitious, yet humble. You must be strategic, yet totally sincere. You must be audacious, yet gracious. If you can hold these opposing forces in balance, you are ready to move on. You have the right foundation. Now we need to build the structure. This concludes Section 1, the mindset. We now transition to Section 2, the skill set.
Section 2, the skill set. Chapter 7, do your homework. Welcome to the tactics. We have established the philosophy. Now we pick up the tools. Keith Ferrazzi opens the second section of the book with a rule that distinguishes the amateur from the professional. Preparation. The vast majority of people walk into meetings, conferences, and networking events completely blind. They rely on their charm, their wit, or pure luck to carry the conversation. They ask generic questions like, "So, what do you do?" or "How about this weather?" Ferrazzi calls this winging it, and he asserts that it is a waste of everyone's time. Chapter 7 is built on the premise that information is the grease of human connection. If you want to build a deep relationship quickly, you cannot spend the first 20 minutes fumbling around trying to find common ground. You need to know the common ground before you even walk in the door. Ferrazzi introduces the concept of doing your homework as a form of respect. When you take the time to research someone before you meet them, you are implicitly saying, "You are important enough for me to invest my time in." So, what does this homework look like? In the pre-internet era, this meant going to the library or reading trade journals. Today, Ferrazzi argues there is absolutely no excuse for ignorance. Before you meet anyone, whether it is a job interview, a sales call, or a dinner party, you must Google them. You are looking for hooks. A hook is a piece of information that allows you to bypass the superficial small talk and dive straight into what matters to them. You are looking for shared interests. Do they play golf? Do they collect wine? Are they obsessed with marathons? Recent news. Did their company just merge? Did they just release a new product? Did their stock price tank? Personal details, to be used carefully. Do they have children?
Where did they go to college? Ferrazzi shares an example of meeting a media executive. By simply doing a quick search, he found out the executive was a fanatic about a specific charity. When they met, Ferrazzi didn't start with business. He started by asking about the charity's recent gala. The executive's eyes lit up. The dynamic shifted instantly from a cold business transaction to a warm conversation between two people who cared about the same things. This research allows you to speak their language. It allows you to frame your ask or your value proposition in a way that resonates with their current reality. However, Ferrazzi offers a crucial nuance. There is a fine line between being prepared and being a stalker. The goal of doing homework is not to show off how much you know. You don't want to rattle off facts about their life like a creepy dossier. I see you live at 123 Maple Street and your dog's name is Rover. That is terrifying. The goal is to gently guide the conversation toward topics where you know they have energy, their blue flame. You use the information to ask better questions, not to provide answers. Instead of saying, "I know you like fly fishing," you might say, "I've been looking to get into outdoor sports, and I heard you might be the person to ask about fishing." Ferrazzi also emphasizes researching the company as much as the person. If you are meeting a CEO, you should know their stock price, their biggest competitor, and their latest annual report. If you walk in and ask a question that could have been answered by reading the first page of their website, you have insulted them. You have shown that you are lazy. He concludes this chapter with a challenge to efficiency. We are all busy. Homework allows you to maximize the ROI of a conversation. If you only have 5 minutes with a VIP, you can't waste 4 of them figuring out who they are. You need to hit the ground running. In short,
Google is your best friend. Use it.
Chapter 8. Take Names. If Chapter 7 was about the preparation before the meeting, Chapter 8 is about the discipline required immediately after. Keith Ferrazzi begins this section with a confession. He is obsessive about lists. He argues that the human brain is a fantastic creative tool, but a terrible filing cabinet. You simply cannot remember everyone you meet, the details of their lives, and when you last spoke to them. If you rely on your memory, you will drop the ball. You will forget to follow up. You will lose touch. And a network that is not maintained is a network that is dying. Therefore, the master networker must become a master librarian of people. The core instruction of Take Names is to systematize your contacts. This is not about having a stack of business cards rubber-banded together in a drawer. That is a graveyard of good intentions. This is about converting raw data into a functional asset. Ferrazzi details his own evolution of contact management, from index cards to Palm Pilots to modern Outlook and CRM systems. While the technology changes, the principle remains rigid: consolidation and categorization. The first step, consolidation. Every contact you have, from your email address book, your phone, your physical business cards, and scraps of paper, must reside in one central master list. This seems obvious, yet few people do it. They have work contacts in Outlook and personal contacts in their phone, and never the two shall meet. Ferrazzi insists on a unified database because your life is unified. A work contact might become a personal friend. A friend might introduce you to a client. The second step, categorization. This is where the magic happens. A list of 5,000 names is useless if you cannot sort it. Ferrazzi suggests tagging every contact with specific attributes.
Location. When you travel to Chicago, you should be able to put up a list of every person you know in Chicago instantly. Interests. If you get an extra ticket to the opera, you need to know who loves opera. Industry. If you need advice on healthcare, you need your healthcare list. The third step, the priority system. Not all contacts are created equal. Ferrazzi introduces the concept of segmentation based on relationship strength and strategic value. Level 1, the A-list. These are your inner circle, your mentors, and the critical stakeholders for your current goals. You must contact them frequently, perhaps once a month or more. Level 2, the B-list. These are strong acquaintances and important allies. You touch base with them quarterly. Level 3, the C-list, the fringe. You keep them warm with an annual holiday card or an occasional mass update. Ferrazzi also introduces a specific tool he uses called the call sheet. He does not sit down and wonder, who should I call today? That is a waste of mental energy. Instead, he or his assistants prepares a printed or digital list of people he needs to reach out to that day. When he is in a taxi, waiting for a plane, or walking to a meeting, he pulls out the list and executes. He batches his calls. This turns dead time into networking time. The chapter emphasizes that this level of organization allows you to be spontaneous. It sounds contradictory, but because the data is organized, you can act quickly. If you have a layover in Dallas, you don't spend an hour thinking, do I know anyone here? You check the list, you see 3 names, and you send 3 texts. I'm in town for 2 hours. Coffee? Ferrazzi warns that this can feel mechanical or cold to some. Is it dehumanizing to reduce friends to entries in a database? He argues the opposite. It is the ultimate act of caring. It ensures that you never forget a birthday. It ensures you never forget to ask about their sick parent.
It ensures that no one slips through the cracks. The Take Names philosophy is simple. If you don't write it down, it didn't happen. If you don't organize it, you can't use it. Narrator, Chapter 9. Warming the Cold Call. We have arrived at the precipice of the most feared activity in the professional world, the cold call. Keith Ferrazzi begins this chapter by validating that fear. The cold call is unnatural. It is intrusive. It is, by definition, an interruption. When you pick up the phone to dial a stranger or type an email to someone who doesn't know you exist, you are stepping into a void of potential rejection. But Ferrazzi argues that the cold call is also inevitable. You cannot build a network solely on people you already know. Eventually, you have to cross the chasm to the people you want to know. The secret, as the chapter title suggests, is that you should never actually make a cold call. Your job is to turn it into a warm call before you ever dial the number. How do you heat it up? First, leverage a shared acquaintance. This is the single most effective way to warm a call. Ferrazzi returns to the concept of trust transfer.
If you call Mr. Smith and say, "Hi, I'm calling because our mutual friend, Jane Doe, suggested we speak," you have immediately borrowed Jane Doe's credibility. You are no longer a stranger. You are a friend of a friend. The barrier to entry drops significantly. This is why the take name strategy from Chapter 8 is so vital. You need to know who knows whom. Second, state your value immediately. Ferrazzi emphasizes that busy people are constantly filtering for noise. If you sound like you are selling something or asking for a favor, the filter snaps shut. You have about 10 seconds to prove you are a signal. You must articulate what is in it for them. Not, "I want a job," but "I have an idea that could help your team solve X problem." Third, construct a draft script.
Ferrazzi is a proponent of scripting, not to sound robotic, but to ensure brevity and impact. He suggests a 4-part structure for the call or email. The hook, the mutual friend or the shared interest you discovered in your homework. The credibility, a 1-sentence explanation of who you are and why you matter. "I'm a VP at firm X," or "I just finished a project on Y." The value, "Why are you calling?" "I have some thoughts on your recent merger." The ask, a specific, low-friction request. "I'll be in your area next Tuesday. Could I stop by for 10 minutes? Ferrazzi advises keeping the ask small. Do not ask for a job on the first call. Do not ask for a massive investment. Ask for advice. Ask for a brief introduction. You are selling the meeting, not the deal. The chapter also covers the importance of timing and persistence. Ferrazzi notes that you will likely get voicemail. This is not a failure. It is an opportunity to leave a perfect, concise message. And when you don't hear back, which you often won't, you must not take it personally. He introduces the rule of professional persistence. Calling once is not enough. Calling 10 times in one day is stalking. The sweet spot is a gentle, rhythmic cadence. A call today, an email 3 days later, a follow-up note a week later. You want to be present, but not annoying. Ferrazzi shares a crucial psychological insight here. Most people give up after one try. By simply following up a second or third time, you separate yourself from 90% of the competition. Finally, he addresses the tone. A cold caller usually sounds apologetic, weak, or overly aggressive. A warm caller sounds confident, relaxed, and curious. You must speak as an equal, not a subordinate. If you believe you have value to offer, your voice will convey that. The goal of Chapter 9 is to transform the cold call from a terrifying gamble into a strategic, calculated entry point.
But, as Ferrazzi warns, even the best script in the world won't work if you can't get past the person guarding the door. This leads us directly into the next challenge. Narrator. Chapter 10. Managing the Gatekeeper, Artfully. In the pursuit of access to power, you will inevitably encounter the gatekeeper. These are the executive assistants, the secretaries, the chiefs of staff, and the receptionists who stand between you and the person you want to meet. Keith Ferrazzi observes that most people view the gatekeeper as an enemy combatant, a hurdle to be jumped over, tricked, or bypassed. Ferrazzi argues that this is a fatal strategic error. The gatekeeper is not the enemy. The gatekeeper is the most important person you will talk to that day. Chapter 10 is a masterclass in shifting your perspective on administrative professionals. Ferrazzi points out that a trusted executive assistant is often the external brain of the executive. They manage the schedule, they filter the information, and, crucially, they decide who gets through. If the assistant doesn't like you, the executive will never hear your name. Ferrazzi provides a rule of thumb: never make an enemy of the person who controls the calendar. He outlines a strategy of turning the gatekeeper into an ally. This begins with basic human decency, which is surprisingly rare in these interactions. Most callers are rude, dismissive, or impatient with assistants. They treat them as furniture. To stand out, you must treat the gatekeeper with the same level of respect, perhaps even more, that you would show the CEO. Here are the specific tactics Ferrazzi details. 1. Acknowledge their power. Do not try to trick them. Do not use evasion tactics like saying it's personal or he's expecting my call if he isn't. Gatekeepers have heard every lie in the book. If you lie to them, you are blacklisted. Instead, be transparent. Say, I know Jones is incredibly busy, and I appreciate you helping me find a slot. By acknowledging their role as the protector of the executive's time, you validate their authority.
2. Make them part of the solution. Ask for their help. Phrases like, "I could really use your advice on how to get this in front of him," or "When do you think would be the best time to try again?" Transform the interaction. You are inviting them to be a co-conspirator in your success. You are deferring to their expertise on their boss's habits. 3. Humanize the relationship. Learn their names. This is non-negotiable. Write their name down in your contact database next to the boss's name. When you call back, say, "Hi Susan, it's Keith again." Ask how their week is going. Ferrazzi notes that he often sends thank you notes or small gifts, not just to the executive, but to the assistant who made the meeting possible. A $10 box of chocolates or a heartfelt card to an overworked assistant can buy you a lifetime of access. 4. The patience play. Understand that the gatekeeper's job is to say no. That is what they are paid for. Do not get angry when they do their job. If they block you, accept it with grace. "I understand completely. I'll send an email so it's in the queue, and maybe I'll check back in a month." This professional persistence signals that you respect the process. Ferrazzi shares an anecdote about how he manages his own time. He relies heavily on his assistants to filter out the noise. If someone is rude to his team, he refuses to do business with them. He assumes that if you cannot be kind to his staff, you are not the kind of person he wants in his network. The ultimate lesson of Chapter 10 is that hierarchy is an illusion when it comes to courtesy. You must be charming to everyone, from the parking attendant to the receptionist to the CEO. The gatekeeper is the first test of your character. Pass it and the doors open. Fail it and they stay locked forever.
Chapter 11. Never Eat Alone. We have arrived at the titular chapter of the book. The phrase, "never eat alone," is not just a catchy title, it is the central operating system of Keith Ferrazzi's life. In this chapter, Ferrazzi argues that invisibility is a fate worse than failure. If you are out of sight, you are out of mind. And the easiest way to remain visible, to keep your network vibrant and active, is to utilize the time you are already spending. Human beings have to eat. We do it 3 times a day, every day, for our entire lives. Ferrazzi looks at the calendar and sees these slots, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, not as biological necessities, but as networking opportunities. If you eat a sandwich at your desk while staring at a spreadsheet, you have wasted an hour. You have consumed calories, but you have created no value. But if you share that sandwich with a colleague, a client, or a potential mentor, you have turned a biological function into a social transaction.
Ferrazzi breaks down the specific dynamics of the meal. There is something primal and disarming about breaking bread. In every culture on earth, sharing food is a sign of trust. It is difficult to be defensive or guarded when you are eating. The table acts as a great equalizer. When the menus are opened, the hierarchy dissolves slightly. You are just 2 humans feeding yourselves. He offers a rigorous schedule for the aspiring superconnector. Breakfasts are for quick, high-energy meetings. They are efficient. You catch people before their day gets chaotic. Lunches are for deeper dives. This is the standard business meeting. Dinners are for relationship building. This is where you get personal. The wine flows, the guards come down, and you talk about life, not just work. But Ferrazzi goes further. He introduces the concept of stacking or cloning yourself. He realizes that he has more people he wants to see than he has meals in a week. So he stops doing one-on-one meals and starts hosting small groups. If he is having dinner with a client, he might invite an interesting professor he just met, and perhaps an up-and-coming artist. This achieves 2 things. Efficiency. He touches 3 relationships in the time it takes to touch 1. Synergy. He becomes the broker of new connections. The client meets the artist meets the professor. Now Ferrazzi isn't just a participant, he is the hub of the wheel. He is providing value to his guests by introducing them to each other. Ferrazzi acknowledges that this takes courage. You might worry, will these people get along? He assures us that if you are the common denominator, and if you are selecting high-quality people, they usually will. People enjoy meeting new, interesting people. You are doing them a favor. The chapter also addresses the logistics of this lifestyle. It requires energy. It requires a budget, though he argues coffee is cheap and you don't always have to pay for everyone.
And it requires the discipline to fill the white space in your calendar. Ferrazzi's rule is strict. If he has a free slot for a meal, he fills it. If a meeting cancels, he goes to his list from Chapter 8 and finds someone else to slot in. He does not dine alone.
He concludes by reminding us that this is not about not enjoying solitude. Solitude is fine for meditation or reading, but in the professional arena, eating alone is a missed opportunity. It is a signal that you are not prioritizing connection. So, look at your calendar for next week. If you see a blank space at 12 p.m., fill it. Narrator, Chapter 12. Share your passions. We now address a common complaint about networking, that it is boring, stiff, and artificial. If you limit your interactions to conference rooms and coffee shops, the conversation will naturally drift toward the mundane. You talk about the market, you talk about the weather, you talk about the deal. This is surface networking. It is functional, but it rarely creates a deep emotional bond. Keith Ferrazzi opens Chapter 12 with a solution to this problem. Stop networking and start living your life, and invite others to join you. The core concept here is the power of the shared activity. Ferrazzi argues that relationships are forged much stronger and faster when two people are engaged in a mutual task or experience, rather than just staring at each other across a table. When you are doing something you love, you are at your best. You are relaxed, you are enthusiastic, and your guard is down. This authenticity is magnetic. He suggests taking the things you are already passionate about, your hobbies, your workouts, your charitable causes, and turning them into relationship-building engines. For example, Ferrazzi is a fitness enthusiast. He realized that he was spending an hour every morning at the gym alone. That was 5 hours a week of potential connection time lost. So he started inviting people to work out with him. "I'm going for a run at 6 a.m. Want to join?" Suddenly, a standard workout becomes a bonding session. The shared struggle of a hard run releases endorphins, which chemically bond people together. This approach has two massive benefits. First, it is the ultimate efficiency hack. Ferrazzi is obsessed with time management. By combining his personal interests with his professional development, he is killing two birds with one stone. He gets his exercise, and he gets the meeting. He cooks dinner for friends, and he nurtures his network. He attends a charity gala he cares about, and he brings a client. He is not carving out extra time for networking. He is layering it onto his existing life. Second, it accelerates trust. You learn more about a person in an hour of play than in a year of conversation. If you play a round of golf with someone, you see how they handle frustration. If you cook a meal with someone, you see how they collaborate. If you volunteer at a soup kitchen together, you see their empathy. These shared experiences create anchors in the memory. You become more than just a business contact. You become a running buddy, a fellow art lover, or a co-volunteer. Ferrazzi warns, however, that this must be genuine. Do not take up golf just because you think it's good for business. If you hate golf, you will be miserable, and your misery will make your companion uncomfortable. You must find your passions. Are you into wine tasting? Start a small wine club. Are you into sci-fi movies? Organize a screening. Are you into hiking? Plan a Saturday morning trail walk. The chapter also touches on the concept of being a content creator of events. When you invite someone to your world, you are the host. The host holds a special position of authority and generosity. You are giving them an experience they might not have had otherwise. Ferrazzi shares stories of his legendary dinner parties where he would invite a mix of people to cook together. He found that chopping vegetables side by side broke down barriers faster than any formal introduction. The CEO and the student were equalized by the cutting board. He concludes Chapter 12 by challenging the listener to dissolve the boundary between work life and personal life. The old school mentality says, keep them separate. Ferrazzi says, merge them. Your friends should be your colleagues, and your colleagues should be your friends. When you share your passions, you attract people who share your values, and those are the relationships that last a lifetime. Narrator, Chapter 13. Follow up or fail. Keith Ferrazzi is unequivocal here. Meeting someone is not networking. Following up is networking. You can be the most charismatic person in the room. You can have the best elevator pitch. You can buy the most expensive dinner. But if you do not follow up, that interaction essentially never happened. It evaporates into the ether of memory. In Chapter 13, Ferrazzi dissects the mechanics of the follow-up. He treats it not as a courtesy, but as a rigid scientific process. The core principle is the 12 to 24-hour rule. When you meet someone new, you have opened a small window of attention. For about 24 hours, you are vivid in their mind. You are a face, a voice, and a story.
After 24 hours, the fog of life rolls in. They meet other people. They deal with crises. You begin to fade. If you wait a week to send an email, they might look at your name and think, who was that again? Therefore, the follow-up must happen immediately. Ferrazzi details the exact anatomy of the perfect follow-up. Step 1. The digital reinforcement. As soon as the meeting is over, or at the very latest the next morning, send an email. This email does not need to be a novel. In fact, it should be short. Subject line needs to be clear. Great meeting you, / specific topic discussed. The opening, express gratitude.
It was a pleasure meeting you at the conference yesterday. The hook. Reiterate a specific point of conversation. This proves you were listening. I really enjoyed hearing your perspective on the Asian markets. The promise. If you promise to send them an article, a contact, or a piece of information, do it now. Deliver on your word immediately. The next step. Suggest a time to reconnect, but keep it low pressure. Step 2. The handwritten note. This is Ferrazzi's secret weapon. In a world of digital noise, a physical piece of paper is a thunderclap. He advocates keeping a stack of high-quality stationery and stamps in your bag and on your desk. After a significant meeting, he writes a thank you note. It takes 2 minutes. But when that note lands on the executive's desk 3 days later, it stands alone. It signals class, thoughtfulness, and an investment of time. Email is easy. Ink is intentional. Ferrazzi also emphasizes the hub-and-spoke follow-up. If you met someone through an introduction, you must follow up with 2 people, the new contact and the person who introduced you. You must close the loop. Send a note to the connector saying, "Thank you for introducing me to Sarah. We had a great conversation." This validates the connector's effort and encourages them to help you again. The chapter addresses the psychology of consolidation. Following up is how you move someone from short-term memory to long-term memory. By contacting them immediately, you anchor your identity in their brain. You transform a fleeting encounter into a permanent connection. Ferrazzi warns against the drop-the-ball syndrome. We all get busy. We stack business cards on our desk and say, "I'll do it on the weekend." The weekend comes and we are tired. The cards sit there. A month passes. Now it is too awkward to reach out. The opportunity is dead. To combat this, you must automate your habits.
Ferrazzi schedules follow-up time at the end of every day or the very beginning of the next. It is part of the workflow, just like brushing your teeth. Ultimately, follow-up or fail is a binary choice. There is no middle ground. If you don't follow up, you are choosing to fail. If you do, you are choosing to build. Narrator, Chapter 14. Be a Conference Commando. We now turn our attention to the Super Bowl of networking, the conference. Keith Ferrazzi observes that for most professionals, a conference is a paid vacation. They fly to a nice city, stay in a hotel, attend a few keynote speeches, and spend the evenings drinking with the same 3 colleagues they see every day at the office. They return home with a hangover and a tote deck, but no new opportunities. In Chapter 14, Ferrazzi demands a complete overhaul of this behavior. He treats a conference not as a leisure activity, but as a military operation, hence the term commando. The premise is simple. You are in a target-rich environment. Nowhere else will you find such a high density of decision-makers, peers, and potential mentors in 1 square mile. To waste this is a professional sin. Ferrazzi breaks down the commando strategy into 3 phases: before, during, and after. Phase 1. The pregame. The battle is won or lost before you even pack your suitcase. Ferrazzi insists that you must never walk into a conference without knowing who is there and who you want to meet. He advises obtaining the attendee list weeks in advance. If the organizers won't give it to you, ask if you can volunteer to help or offer to host a pre-conference dinner. Once you have the list, you scrub it. You identify the targets, the people who align with your mission from Chapter 3. Then you reach out. You send an email. "I see we'll both be at the Tech Summit next week. I'd love to grab coffee for 10 minutes. By the time Ferrazzi lands at the airport, his calendar is already full of high-value meetings.
He is not wandering the halls hoping for serendipity. He has engineered it. Phase 2.
The operation. Once you are on the ground, you must adopt specific tactical behaviors. Don't hide in the safe zone. Most people naturally drift toward people they know. Ferrazzi forbids this. You can talk to your coworkers back at the office. At the conference, you must constantly be meeting new people. Master the geography. Ferrazzi pays attention to where he stands. He doesn't sit in the middle of a row where he is trapped. He sits on the aisle. At receptions, he doesn't stand in the corner. He stands near the food or the bar, the high-traffic choke points where everyone must eventually go. Be the information hub. Ferrazzi makes it his business to know everything. Where is the best private party tonight? Which breakout session is the most controversial? Who is the surprise guest? By gathering this intelligence and sharing it, he becomes a resource. People come to him to find out what to do. He becomes the social director of the event. The private dinner. This is a classic Ferrazzi move. While everyone else is eating rubber chicken at the official banquet, Ferrazzi organizes a private dinner at a nearby top-tier restaurant. He invites the keynote speakers, the CEOs, and the interesting people he met that day. He creates an exclusive event within an event. This positions him as a leader and a connector. Phase 3. The extraction. The conference doesn't end when the closing speech is over. The follow-up is critical. Ferrazzi notes that people leave conferences with a stack of business cards and good intentions, but they rarely execute. He organizes his collected cards immediately. He writes notes on the back of them, promise to send article, or introduce to Bob. And he follows up within that critical 24-hour window we discussed in the previous chapter. Ferrazzi also addresses the deep dive. He acknowledges that you cannot meet everyone. It is better to have meaningful conversations with 5 people than to shake hands with 50.
The commando knows when to stop scanning the room and start listening. He concludes by reminding us that being a conference commando is exhausting. It requires early mornings and late nights. It requires being on for 12 to 14 hours a day. But the ROI, the return on investment, is astronomical. One good conference, executed properly, can provide enough leads and relationships to fuel your career for a year. So, the next time you put on that lanyard, remember, you are on a mission. Narrator, Chapter 15, Connecting with Connectors. In economics, there is a principle known as the Pareto principle, or the 80-20 rule. It states that 80% of your results come from 20% of your efforts. Keith Ferrazzi applies this same logic to networking. He argues that all contacts are not created equal. There exists a select breed of individuals who hold a disproportionate amount of influence and access. He calls them superconnectors. If you spend your time trying to meet 1,000 individual people, you are working too hard. But if you spend your time building deep relationships with just a few superconnectors, you effectively inherit their networks. You gain access to thousands of people through a single point of entry. Ferrazzi identifies these people as the hubs of the social universe. They are the grand central stations of information and introductions. But who are they, and where do you find them? In Chapter 15, Ferrazzi provides a field guide to identifying these high-leverage individuals. They usually inhabit professions that require them to know everyone in order to do their jobs. Here are the specific categories of superconnectors you should target. 1. Restaurateurs. The owner or the maitre d' of a high-end restaurant is a powerful ally. They know the CEOs, the politicians, and the celebrities who dine there. They control the seating chart. If you befriend a restaurateur, you are treated like royalty.
They can point out who is in the room and facilitate introductions. They are the gatekeepers of the social nightlife. 2. Headhunters, executive recruiters. It is their literal job to know the top talent and the top opportunities in every industry. They know who is hiring, who is firing, and who is looking to move. A relationship with a top-tier headhunter is an insurance policy for your career. Ferrazzi advises that you should help them fill positions even when you aren't looking for a job yourself. By becoming a source for them, you become a priority for them. 3. Lobbyists. Lobbyists are professional persuaders. Their currency is access. They know how to navigate the halls of power, and they know the legislative landscape before it hits the news. They are masters of connecting people with problems to people with solutions. 4. Fundraisers. People who raise money for nonprofits or universities are by necessity connected to the wealthy and the philanthropic. They know what people care about. They know who has disposable income. They are experts in the soft ask. 5. Public relations experts. PR professionals are the mouthpieces for companies and stars. They control the flow of information to the media. If you need visibility, you need to know the people who control the spotlight. 6. Journalists. Journalists are hungry for information. If you can provide them with a scoop, a trend, or an interesting story, they will return the favor. They are professionally curious and usually have a massive Rolodex of sources. Ferrazzi's strategy is clear. Do not just network randomly, be strategic. Look at your contact list. Do you have a headhunter? Do you have a journalist? Do you have a restaurateur? If not, you have gaps in your infrastructure. He advises you to cultivate these relationships with extreme care. These people are constantly being pitched and pestered. You cannot approach them as a taker. You must approach them as a peer and a provider of value.
For a headhunter, send them a great candidate. For a journalist, give them a great tip. For a restaurateur, bring in a big group of paying customers on a slow Tuesday night. By feeding the super connectors, you are feeding the network at its source. You are creating a multiplier effect. One relationship with a super connector can yield more opportunities than a year of cold calling. Ferrazzi closes this chapter with a reminder of efficiency. Your time is finite. You must invest it where the yield is highest. Building a bridge to a connector is the highest yield investment you can make. Narrator, Chapter 16, Expanding Your Circle. If the previous chapters were about deepening your existing connections, Chapter 16 is about widening the lens. Keith Ferrazzi challenges us here to confront a biological instinct that limits our growth, our tendency to stick with our own kind. Sociologists call this homophily. It is the phenomenon where birds of a feather flock together. Bankers hang out with bankers. Artists hang out with artists. Liberals hang out with liberals. We naturally gravitate toward people who look like us, think like us, and agree with us. It is comfortable. It is safe. But Ferrazzi warns that comfort is the enemy of innovation. If your network is a mirror image of yourself, you are in an echo chamber. You are circulating the same ideas, the same opportunities, and the same complaints. You are not learning anything new. In this chapter, Ferrazzi introduces the sociological concept of the strength of weak ties. This theory, developed by Mark Granovetter, suggests that your closest friends, your strong ties, are less likely to get you a job than your acquaintances, your weak ties. Why? Because your close friends know the same people and information that you do. Your acquaintances, however, occupy different worlds. They are the bridges to new clusters of information and opportunity. Ferrazzi urges you to become a broker of information.
A broker is someone who stands at the intersection of different social circles. They translate the language of the tech world to the finance world. They bring the creativity of the arts into the structure of the corporation. To do this, you must deliberately expand your circle into the unknown. Ferrazzi lays out a strategy for breaking the homogeneity of your network. First, look at the demographics of your current circle. Is everyone the same age, the same race, the same socioeconomic background? If so, you are missing out on massive sectors of the economy and culture. Ferrazzi argues that diversity is not just a moral imperative, it is a strategic advantage. The more diverse your network, the more robust your intelligence. Second, identify the structural holes in your network. Are you completely disconnected from the nonprofit world? Do you know anyone in politics? Do you know anyone in manufacturing? These gaps are blind spots. You need to fill them.
Third, go where you do not belong. This is the practical application. If you are a lawyer, stop going to bar association mixers. Go to a design conference. If you are 25, stop hanging out only with other millennials. Find a mentor who is 60. Ferrazzi shares his own experiences of attending events where he was the odd one out. He describes the initial discomfort of walking into a room where you don't speak the jargon and you don't know the dress code. But he explains that this is exactly where the gold is buried. Because you are unique in that environment, you stand out. You are interesting. You bring a perspective they don't have. He also emphasizes the importance of connecting with the fringe. These are the mavericks, the artists, the up-and-comers who aren't famous yet but are doing interesting work. Most people ignore them because they have no current status. Ferrazzi invests in them. He knows that the fringe eventually becomes the mainstream. The chapter serves as a reminder that the world is much bigger than your cubicle or your industry. By stepping outside of your social zip code, you increase your surface area for luck. You become the person who says, "I know a guy," in situations where no one else does. Ferrazzi concludes with a challenge. Pick a community you know nothing about, be it a different industry, a different cultural group, or a different hobby, and find a way to enter it, not as a tourist, but as a student. Narrator, Chapter 17, The Art of Small Talk. We have reached the end of Section 2, the skill set. We close this section by addressing a skill that is often dismissed as trivial, yet is the absolute prerequisite for every relationship you will ever build. Small talk. Keith Ferrazzi knows that you probably hate it. Most intelligent, ambitious people do. They view small talk as insincere chatter, a waste of breath about the weather or the local sports team. They want to get straight to the point.
They want to talk business, strategy, or philosophy. But Ferrazzi argues that you cannot simply walk up to a stranger and ask them for their deepest secrets or their business. That is social assault. Small talk is the necessary airlock between the cold vacuum of being strangers and the warm atmosphere of intimacy. It is the sniff test. Before anyone will trust you with their business, they need to know if you are safe, if you are sane, and if you are pleasant to be around. In Chapter 17, Ferrazzi dissects the mechanics of conversation. He wants to move you from being a verbal wallflower to a master conversationalist. He begins with the most important rule: be vulnerable. Ferrazzi shares a counterintuitive tactic. When he enters a room full of intimidating, high-powered people, he doesn't put on a mask of false confidence. He often walks up to someone and says, "I have to be honest, I don't know a soul here and I'm a little intimidated." This is a power move. By admitting weakness, you disarm the other person. You trigger their empathy. Suddenly, they are not judging you, they are protecting you. They will almost always say, "Oh, don't worry, I felt the same way when I got here. Let me introduce you to." The second rule: ask, don't tell. The biggest mistake people make in small talk is thinking they need to be interesting. They monologue, they list their achievements. Ferrazzi flips this. You don't need to be interesting, you need to be interested. The sweetest sound in the world to any person is the sound of their own voice. Your job is to be the conductor of their symphony. He suggests avoiding the conversation killers, like, "How are you?" which invites a one-word answer, "Fine," or "What do you do?" which is status-seeking.
Instead, ask open-ended questions that invite passion. What is the most exciting thing you are working on right now? How did you get started in your field? What do you do when you're not working? The third rule: verbal ping-pong. A conversation is a game of catch. If you hold the ball too long, the game stops. If you don't throw it back, the game stops. You must listen intently to their answer, pick up a keyword, and use it to frame your next question or comment. If they say, "I just got back from Italy," do not say, "Cool, I like pizza." Say, "Italy, I've always wanted to go to Florence. Did you get a chance to visit Tuscany?" You are proving that you are listening. The fourth rule: body language. Ferrazzi emphasizes that 90% of communication is nonverbal. Smile. It sounds basic, but it is a biological signal of friendliness. Uncross your arms. Open your chest. It signals that you are approachable. Eye contact. Do not scan the room. Lock in. Make them feel like they are the only person on the planet. Touching. A gentle touch on the elbow or shoulder, when appropriate and culturally acceptable, can create a subconscious bond. Ferrazzi also addresses the graceful exit. The fear of getting stuck in a boring conversation paralyzes many networkers. He provides a formula for leaving without being rude. Wait for a pause. Summarize something they said. "It was fascinating to hear about your project." Offer a valid reason to move. "I need to catch the speaker before he leaves," or "I promised to say hello to someone." The handshake. The follow-up hook. "I'll send you that email." Small talk is not about filling the silence. It is about finding the hook, the shared interest or the emotional connection that allows you to pivot to big talk. Ferrazzi concludes Section 2 with this thought: the skill set, doing homework, taking names, calling, and small talk, is the machinery. But machinery needs an operator. It needs a human being who genuinely cares.
This concludes Section 2, the skill set. We now transition to Section 3, turning connections into compatriots. We are moving from the mechanics of meeting people to the art of befriending them.
Narrator Section 3. Turning Connections into Compatriots. Chapter 18. Health, Wealth, and Children. We enter a new phase of the book. Up until this point, we have discussed how to meet people, how to organize them, and how to start a conversation. But a contact list is not a community. To transform a casual acquaintance into a loyal compatriot, someone who will go to bat for you when the chips are down, you must move beyond the transactional. Keith Ferrazzi opens Section 3 with a profound psychological insight. The way to a person's loyalty is not through their office door, but through their heart. In Chapter 18, he identifies the 3 things that matter most to almost every human being on the planet. They are not quarterly projections or market share. They are health, wealth, children. Ferrazzi argues that if you can help someone with these 3 fundamental pillars of their life, you stop being a business associate and you start being family. Let us break these down in minute detail. First, health. There is nothing more vulnerable than illness. When a person or their loved one is sick, their professional veneer cracks. They are scared. They are desperate for information and care. Ferrazzi explains that this is the moment where you can provide the highest possible value. If a client mentions they have a bad back, do not just say, "That's too bad." Recommend the specific chiropractor who fixed your back. If a mentor mentions their wife has a rare condition, use your network to find the leading specialist in the country and get them an appointment. Ferrazzi shares stories of how he has used his connections to get people into the best hospitals or to find second opinions.
When you save someone from physical pain or navigate the terrifying medical system for them, they will never forget it. You have impacted their survival. Second, wealth. This goes beyond just making money. It is about security. Everyone worries about their financial future. Everyone worries about their job security. Ferrazzi suggests that you should always be looking for ways to make your friends richer, literally or metaphorically. This could mean passing along a hot investment tip, if you are qualified. It could mean helping them refinance a home by introducing them to a great mortgage broker. But most often, it means helping them in their career. If you see a job opening that is perfect for a contact who feels stuck, send it to them. If you can help them negotiate a raise, do it. When you contribute to someone's prosperity, you become a partner in their success. Third, children. This is the ultimate key. Parents are biologically wired to care more about their offspring than they care about themselves. If you help a man make $1 million, he will be grateful. If you help his daughter get into her dream college, he will love you. Ferrazzi advises paying close attention when people talk about their kids. Are they struggling with math? Connect them with a great tutor. Are they looking for a summer internship? Offer them a spot at your company. Do they need a recommendation letter? Write it. Ferrazzi notes that he keeps track of the ages and interests of his contacts' children. Sending a small, thoughtful gift to a child, a book about dinosaurs if the kid likes dinosaurs, often makes a bigger impact on the parent than a bottle of expensive wine ever could. The philosophy behind health, wealth, and children connects directly to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Most business networking stays at the top of the pyramid, self-actualization and esteem. But when you touch on health, safety, and family, you are operating at the base of the pyramid.
You are dealing with the foundational elements of human existence.
Ferrazzi warns, however, that this requires extreme emotional intelligence. You cannot intrude. You cannot offer unsolicited medical advice to someone you barely know. That is offensive. You must listen for the opening. You must wait for them to share the struggle. And when they do, you must offer help gently. I know a great specialist. Would you mind if I made a call? By focusing on these 3 areas, you shift the relationship dynamic. You are no longer the guy who sells software or the lawyer. You become the guy who helped my son or the woman who found my doctor. In the ruthless world of business, deals are forgotten, contracts expire, but personal kindness in times of need creates a bond that is unbreakable. That is how you turn a connection into a compatriot. Chapter 19. Social Arbitrage. We now arrive at one of the most intellectually fascinating concepts in the book,
Keith Ferrazzi borrows a term from the world of high finance, arbitrage, and repurposes it for the world of human connection. In finance, arbitrage is the practice of taking advantage of a price difference between two or more markets. You buy gold in London, where it is cheap, and you sell it instantly in New York, where it is expensive. The profit is the difference. It is essentially risk-free profit generated by knowledge and access. Ferrazzi argues that you can and should do exactly the same thing with relationships. Social arbitrage is the act of connecting a problem in one part of your network with a solution in another part of your network. Here is the minute-by-minute breakdown of how this works. Every day, you encounter people who have needs. I need a graphic designer. I need a new accountant. I need advice on how to expand into China. Simultaneously, you know people who have solutions. You know a talented graphic designer looking for work. You know a trustworthy accountant. You know a consultant who specializes in Asian markets.
If you do nothing, these two parties remain separated, the problem remains unsolved, and the talent remains underutilized. But if you practice social arbitrage, you step in the middle. You say, I know exactly who you should talk to. You make the introduction. By doing this, you create value out of thin air. You didn't do the graphic design. You didn't do the accounting. But because you made the connection, you get credit from both sides. The person with the problem is grateful because you solved their pain. The person with the solution is grateful because you brought them business. Ferrazzi points out that unlike financial arbitrage, where you sell the asset and lose it, social arbitrage is limitless. You can introduce that graphic designer to 10 different people. You don't spend the contact, you actually strengthen it. The more business you bring the designer, the more loyal they become to you. The goal of this chapter is to transform yourself into a human switchboard. Ferrazzi details the mindset required to become a social arbitrageur. 1. Constant vigilance for problems. Most people tune out when others start complaining about their work struggles. The master networker leans in. A complaint is an opportunity. When someone says, we are really struggling to find good engineers, that is a signal. You should immediately run a mental search of your database. 2. The knowledge broker. Social arbitrage isn't just about people, it is also about information. Ferrazzi emphasizes the importance of reading, learning, and synthesizing ideas. If you read an article about a new marketing trend, send it to your friends in marketing. You are moving information from a source that has it, the article, to a source that needs it, your friend. You become a curator of intelligence. 3. Political arbitrage. This is the advanced level. Ferrazzi details navigating the internal politicals of large organizations. Often, the marketing department hates the sales department.
They don't talk, they hoard information. If you can be the person who walks between the silos, who takes the data from sales and explains it to marketing, you become indispensable. You become the translator. In a corporate structure, the person who connects the isolated islands of power becomes the most powerful person in the room. 4. The verification responsibility. Ferrazzi adds a crucial caveat. You cannot arbitrage junk. If you recommend a plumber who floods the house or a lawyer who loses the case, your reputation is destroyed. Therefore, social arbitrage requires you to vet your sources. You are putting your stamp of approval on the connection. If you aren't sure, you must qualify the introduction. I haven't worked with him personally, but I've heard good things. The ultimate result of social arbitrage is that you become the go-to person. You want your phone to ring. You want people to think, I don't know how to solve this, but I bet Keith knows someone who does. When you achieve this status, you no longer have to hunt for opportunities. Opportunities come to you. You are the hub of the wheel. Information flows through you. Deals flow through you. You are no longer just a participant in the market. You are the market maker. Ferrazzi concludes the chapter by noting that this is the easiest way to maintain a network. You don't have to take everyone to lunch. A simple email introduction. John, meet Mary. I think you two could do great work together. Takes 30 seconds, but it generates goodwill that lasts for years. Narrator Chapter 20. Pinging. All the time. We have established that building a network takes effort, but maintaining it, that takes discipline. Keith Ferrazzi opens Chapter 20 with a sobering reality. Relationships are entropic. Left to their own devices, they decay. You might have had a brilliant dinner with a client 3 months ago, but if you haven't spoken since, that relationship is cooling off. If you wait a year, it is cold.
If you wait 2 years, it is dead. The solution to this entropy is a technique Ferrazzi calls pinging. A ping is a quick, casual contact. It is borrowed from the technical term in computer networking, where a server sends a signal to another server just to check if it is there.
Ping. Pong. The signal says, I am here. Are you there? Ferrazzi argues that 80% of maintaining a relationship is simply staying top of mind. You do not need to have a profound, hour-long conversation every time you speak. You just need to show up on their radar screen. The core instruction of this chapter is frequency over depth. Ferrazzi breaks down the mechanics of the ping. The cadence. You must respect the tiers of your network, which we organized in Chapter 8, the Inner Circle, Level 1. These are your closest allies and key business partners. You should ping them at least once a month. The Middle Circle, Level 2. These are important contacts, but not critical for daily operations. You should ping them once a quarter. The Fringe, Level 3. These are people you want to keep warm, but don't have immediate business with. You ping them once a year. The Content. What do you say in a ping? Many people freeze because they think they need a reason to call. Ferrazzi says the relationship is the reason. The ping should be short, valuable, or personal. The I thought of you ping. Saw this article on renewable energy and thought of your project. Hope you're well. The Life Update ping. Just wanted to let you know I've moved to a new firm. Here is my new contact info. Let's catch up soon. The Special Occasion ping. Birthdays are the gold standard. Ferrazzi is militant about birthdays. If you call someone on their birthday, you stand out, because most people just write HBD on a Facebook wall. A phone call is personal. The Method. Pinging can be done through email, text, or a quick phone call.
Ferrazzi is a fan of the travel ping. When he is traveling to a city, he blasts out emails to everyone he knows in that zip code. I'll be in London next week. Let me know if you're around. Even if they can't meet, the ping reminds them that he exists and that he is active. The Mass ping. As your network grows to thousands, you cannot email everyone individually. Ferrazzi discusses the delicate art of the broadcast email. He suggests sending an annual or biannual update to your entire list, but this cannot look like spam. It must be personal. It should cover what you have been up to, what you are excited about, and offer value. It is a newsletter about your life. However, he warns, use the BCC field. Never share everyone's email address with everyone else. That is a privacy violation. The psychology of the ping. Why does this work? Because it makes the other person feel valued. It says, I am busy, but I am not too busy for you. It also lowers the friction for future asks. If you have pinged someone 3 times in the last year, asking them for a favor is easy. The lines of communication are open. If you haven't spoken in 3 years, the ask is awkward. Ferrazzi admits that pinging can feel like a chore. It is repetitive. It is unglamorous. It involves sitting at a computer or on a phone, scrolling through lists and hitting send over and over again. But this is the compound interest of relationships. Small, consistent investments of time yield massive returns of trust over decades. He concludes by advising you to use your fringe moments. Waiting for a table? Ping someone. Stuck in traffic? Hands-free? Ping someone. If you are awake, you should be pinging.
Narrator. Chapter 21. Find anchor tenants and feed them. We conclude Section 3 with a strategy borrowed directly from the commercial real estate industry. This is the secret to hosting events that people actually want to attend. Keith Ferrazzi asks you to visualize a shopping mall. When a developer builds a mall, they do not start by leasing space to the frozen yogurt stand or the independent sock store. They start by securing the anchor tenants. These are the massive department stores, the Nordstroms, the Macy's, the Bloomingdale's. Why? Because the anchor tenant brings the traffic. If you have Nordstrom, the smaller stores will line up to pay rent just to be near them. The anchor tenant creates the ecosystem. Ferrazzi applies this logic to your social life. If you are organizing a dinner party, a conference, or a mixer, you are the developer. If you send out invitations to 15 random people, you might get a few acceptances, but the event will lack gravity. It will be just another night out. However, if you secure an anchor guest, a person of significant status, influence, or interest, the dynamics change entirely. Ferrazzi details the step-by-step process of engineering a successful event using this principle. Step 1. Identify your anchors. Who in your network has the gravitational pull to attract others? This might be a CEO,
a well-known author, a local celebrity, or simply someone who is incredibly charismatic and beloved. This person is your Nordstrom. Step 2. Feed the anchor. You cannot simply demand that a high-profile person attend your dinner. They are busy. They have better options. You must feed them. This means offering them a specific value proposition for attending. Perhaps you tell them, I am inviting 3 young entrepreneurs who are working on technology relevant to your industry. I think you'd find their perspective fascinating. Or you appeal to their specific interests.
If they love Italian wine, you tell them you are opening a rare vintage of Barolo. Ferrazzi emphasizes that you often have to build the event around the anchor schedule. You ask them, I'm planning a dinner. What dates work best for you next month? You lock them in before you invite a single other person. Step 3. The waterfall. Once the anchor tenant says yes, you use their name to fill the rest of the slots. You call the next tier of guests and say, I'm having a small dinner on Thursday with anchor name, and we'd love for you to join. Suddenly, the invite is irresistible. People want to be in the room with power. They want to be in the room with the cool kids. The acceptance rate skyrockets. You have successfully leveraged the anchor's brand equity to build your own. Ferrazzi warns that this must be done with integrity. You cannot lie. If you say the CEO is coming, the CEO better be there. If they cancel last minute, you must inform your guests. Step 4. The mix. A room full of anchor tenants might actually be boring. If you have 10 CEOs, they will just talk about being CEOs. Ferrazzi advises a blend. You want 1 or 2 anchors, but you also want spark plugs, people who are funny, provocative, or creative. You want journalists, artists, or up-and-comers. The anchors provide the draw, the others provide the energy. He also touches on the concept of co-hosting. If you do not have access to an anchor tenant yet, partner with someone who does. Find a friend who knows a VIP and offer to do all the work, the cooking, the organizing, the paying, if they will co-host and bring their VIP contact. You are trading your labor and capital for their social access. Ferrazzi shares stories of his early days in New York and Washington, D.C., where he would host parties in his small apartment. He would spend weeks courting a specific journalist or politician. Once he got them, his apartment became the place to be.
He wasn't rich and his apartment wasn't fancy, but his guest list was gold. The lesson of Chapter 21 is that social proof is real. People look to others to decide where to invest their time. By securing an anchor tenant, you validate your event. You signal that this is a room worth being in. This brings us to the end of Section 3, turning connections into compatriots. You now know how to deepen relationships and leverage them to build communities. We now move into Section 4. Note that in the original edition, the book transitioned here, but in the expanded edition, Ferrazzi added specific chapters to address the revolution that changed everything, the Internet. We proceed to Section 4, Connecting in the Digital Age. Section 4, Connecting in the Digital Age. Chapter 22, Tap the Fringe. We step into the era of the expanded edition. When Keith Ferrazzi first wrote Never Eat Alone, the social landscape was physical. It was handshakes, Rolodexes, and landlines. Today, the landscape is digital, global, and instantaneous. Section 4 is not just an add-on, it is a fundamental update to the operating system of connection, and it begins with a strategy that the Internet has made infinitely easier: tapping the fringe. Ferrazzi opens this chapter by challenging the traditional target list mentality. In the old world, you focused on the center, the CEO, the president, the known power players. But in the digital age, power is decentralized. Influence has dispersed to the edges. The fringe refers to the people who are not in the mainstream of your industry, but who are innovating on the edges. They are the bloggers, the independent researchers, the niche podcasters, and the superfans. They may not have a fancy title at a Fortune 500. That's 2 things the CEO does not: specific, deep expertise, a rabidly loyal micro-community. Ferrazzi argues that the Internet allows you to practice long-tail networking.
In statistics, the long tail refers to the trailing end of a distribution curve. In retail, Amazon makes money not just by selling millions of copies of the #1 bestseller, but by selling a few copies of millions of obscure books. In networking, the long tail means you can now maintain hundreds of relationships with people who share your hyper-specific interests. Here is the strategy for tapping the fringe. 1. Use social listening. You don't need to wait for a conference to find these people. You can find them today. Ferrazzi advises using tools to monitor keywords relevant to your blue flame. If you are interested in sustainable architecture, don't just follow the big firms. Look for the graduate student who is blogging about a new material. Look for the person on Twitter who is curating threads on the topic. These people are accessible. Unlike the CEO of a major firm, the fringe dweller is likely to respond to a thoughtful comment or an email. They are hungry for connection. 2. The unexpected introduction. Because fringe contacts are often outside your immediate bubble, they serve as bridges to entire worlds you didn't know existed. Ferrazzi shares how connecting with a single blogger in a niche field can suddenly open up an invitation to a conference you've never heard of, or introduce you to a new technology before your competitors see it. 3. Be the bridge. Once you identify these fringe players, your job is to bring them into the center. This is a powerful form of value creation. If you can introduce the brilliant but unknown coder to the vice president of engineering at your firm, you look like a visionary. You are the scout. You are the one looking at the horizon while everyone else is staring at their feet. 4. Digital generosity. How do you court the fringe? You amplify them. Retweet their work, quote them in your articles, link to their blogs. Ferrazzi notes that digital validation is a currency.
When you shine a light on someone who is used to working in the shadows, you earn their permanent gratitude. The danger of the digital age is the echo chamber, following the same 50 famous people that everyone else follows. Ferrazzi warns that this is a recipe for mediocrity. To get unique results, you need unique inputs. Tapping the fringe is about deliberately diversifying your digital diet. It is about recognizing that the next big thing usually comes from the place you least expect. By casting your net into the digital ocean, you catch the opportunities that the traditional fishermen miss. Narrator, Chapter 23. Become the king of content. In the pre-digital age, your reputation was what people said about you when you left the room. Today, your reputation is what Google says about you before you even enter the room. Keith Ferrazzi opens Chapter 23 with a clear imperative. In the connected age, you are a media company. You are not just a consumer of information, you must be a producer of it. To be a thought leader, you must actually lead with your thoughts. This chapter is about transforming yourself from a passive networker into a magnet. Ferrazzi distinguishes between networking, outbound effort, and content marketing, inbound attraction. When you create valuable content, you don't have to chase people. People come to you. You build authority, credibility, and familiarity at scale. Here is the blueprint for becoming a king or queen of content. 1. Find your niche. You cannot be an expert on everything. Ferrazzi advises returning to your blue flame, that intersection of passion and talent. What is the one subject you can talk about for hours? What is the unique perspective you bring to your industry? It is better to be the world's leading expert on retail supply chain logistics for organic food than a generic business consultant. Specificity builds trust. 2. Choose your medium. You do not need to be everywhere.
You need to be where your audience is. The blog, newsletter. This is the bedrock. It is your owned real estate. Ferrazzi emphasizes the power of the written word to clarify your thinking. Social media, LinkedIn, Twitter, this is for distribution and conversation. It is where you ping the world. Video audio, if you are better at speaking than writing, start a podcast or a YouTube channel. The key is consistency. One post is an accident. A weekly post is a brand. 3. Curate, don't just create. This is a relief for many who fear the blank page. Ferrazzi explains that you don't always have to originate the idea. You can be the filter. If you read 5 industry newsletters a week, summarize the 3 most important points and share that with your network. Here are the top 3 things I learned this week about X. You are providing a service. You are saving people time. By curating the best intelligence, you become the source of intelligence. 4. The host mentality online. Just as you host a dinner party offline, you host conversations online. When you post something, do not just drop a link. Ask a question. I found this article on AI fascinating, but I disagree with the conclusion about privacy. What do you think? Engage in the comments. Reply to people. Create a digital salon where people feel heard.
Content as a networking tool. This is the Ferrazzi twist. He uses content to open doors. If he wants to meet a specific CEO, he doesn't just call and ask for a meeting. He calls and says, "I'm writing an article on leadership trends for my blog/LinkedIn, and I'd love to get your quote." Suddenly, the dynamic shifts. You are not asking for a favor, you are offering publicity. You are offering them a platform. Most people are flattered to be interviewed. Once you have the interview, you have the relationship. Authenticity is the killer app. The internet is flooded with corporate speak and generic fluff. Ferrazzi argues that the content that cuts through the noise is personal. It is vulnerable. Share your failures, share your doubts, share the behind the scenes of your work. When you show your humanity, you allow people to connect with you emotionally, not just intellectually. The ultimate goal of Chapter 23 is to build a digital asset that works for you while you sleep. When someone Googles you, they should find a trail of breadcrumbs that leads them to the conclusion, this person is smart, helpful, and relevant. You are building a library of value, and in the information economy, he who holds the library holds the power. Narrator, Chapter 24, Engineering Serendipity. We often think of serendipity as luck, a happy accident, a chance encounter, a bolt of lightning. Keith Ferrazzi challenges this definition. He believes that while you cannot control when lightning strikes, you can certainly build a lightning rod. You can increase the probability of the impossible happening. In Chapter 24, Ferrazzi presents a methodology for engineering serendipity, using the tools of the digital age. The core premise is that connections often happen in the spaces between intended actions. You go to a conference for a speech, but you meet your future business partner in the hallway. You join a company for a job, but you find a mentor in the cafeteria. In the physical world, these collisions are limited by geography and physics. In the digital world, you can engineer these collisions at scale. Ferrazzi breaks this down into specific behaviors. 1. The digital bump. Ferrazzi encourages a habit of random, low-friction digital interactions. This is similar to the ping, but more chaotic. It is commenting on a stranger's post. It is joining a Twitter space or a Clubhouse room on a whim. It is replying to a newsletter author. By constantly putting small hooks into the digital stream, you increase the surface area for something good to stick. 2. Joining flow communities. Serendipity thrives in high-flow environments. Ferrazzi advises joining online communities where ideas and people circulate rapidly. These are Slack groups, Discord servers, LinkedIn groups, or alumni networks. But you cannot just be a lurker. You must be active. You must introduce yourself. You must ask questions. Who here is working on X? Does anyone need help with Y? By simply raising your hand in a digital crowd, you invite the universe to respond. 3. The super connector algorithm. Ferrazzi discusses how social media algorithms are essentially serendipity engines. If you engage with high-quality content, the algorithm feeds you more high-quality people. He suggests curating your feed ruthlessly. Unfollow the noise. Follow the signal. If you follow smart, connected people, the suggested for you sidebar becomes a goldmine of potential connections. You are training the machine to find your tribe. 4. Public displays of curiosity. When you are learning something new, do it in public. If you are learning to code, post your progress. If you are reading a history of Rome, tweet your favorite quotes. This attracts others who are on the same path. It creates a beacon for like-minded people. You might find a study buddy, a mentor, or a debate partner.
This is serendipity that you summoned by being open. 5. Be a router. When you see two people discussing the same topic in two different places online, introduce them. Hey, @user A, you should check out what @user B just wrote about this. You have just engineered a collision.
Even if you are not part of the resulting conversation, you are the architect of it. You get the credit for the serendipity. Ferrazzi concludes Section 4 with a philosophical point about the digital age. It is easy to be overwhelmed by the noise. It is easy to be cynical about social media. But if you view these tools as serendipity machines, as ways to shrink the world and accelerate connection, they become powerful allies. The internet is not just for information, it is for intersection. This concludes Section 4, Connecting in the Digital Age. We now move to the final and most sophisticated phase of the book. This is where we talk about legacy, brand, and the highest levels of influence. Section 5, Trading Up and Giving Back. Narrator. Section 5, Trading Up and Giving Back. Chapter 25, Be Interesting. We enter the final section of the book, which focuses on the long game, leadership, branding, and legacy. Keith Ferrazzi begins this section with a harsh truth that undercuts everything else if ignored. You can have the best Rolodex in the world, but if you are boring, it doesn't matter. In Chapter 25, Ferrazzi argues that being connected is not an end in itself. It is a means to share who you are. Therefore, you must be someone worth knowing. He draws a distinction between the schmoozer, who relies on charm and aggressive handshaking, and the interesting person, who relies on intellect, experience, and unique perspective. The schmoozer fights for attention. The interesting person attracts it effortlessly. So, how do you become interesting? Ferrazzi provides a curriculum for personal enrichment. 1. Be a student of the world.
Ferrazzi insists that you must constantly feed your brain. You cannot just read the trade journals of your own industry. That makes you one-dimensional. He advocates for broad, eclectic consumption. Read history, read psychology, read fiction. Go to art galleries, watch documentaries. When you know a little bit about a lot of things, you can connect with anyone. You can talk to a physicist about chaos theory, and a moment later talk to a marketer about consumer trends. You become a universal socket, able to plug into any conversation. 2. Have a point of view. There is nothing more forgettable than a person who agrees with everything. Ferrazzi encourages you to develop informed opinions. Do not be contrarian just to be difficult, but do not be afraid to say, I see it differently. Unique insights are valuable currency. People remember the person who made them think, not the person who just nodded. 3. Exploit your defects. This is a powerful concept. We often try to hide our quirks, our odd hobbies, or our unusual backgrounds to fit in. Ferrazzi says you should do the opposite. Highlight them. If you are a corporate lawyer who plays the accordion, talk about the accordion. If you are a CEO who loves skateboarding, put a skateboard in your office. These defects or oddities humanize you. They make you sticky in people's memories. Oh, that's the skateboarding CEO. It gives people a handle to grab onto. 4. Travel. Ferrazzi views travel not as leisure, but as education. When you step out of your culture, you learn empathy and adaptability. You collect stories. A person with stories is never boring. He suggests that when you travel, you don't just sit by the pool. You meet the locals. You find the connectors in that foreign city, using the research skills from Chapter 7. 5. The obligation of content. Ferrazzi returns to the idea that you must bring something to the table. If you are going to a dinner party, prepare.
Have 3 interesting stories ready. Have 3 questions ready. He treats social interaction as a performance. You owe your audience a good show. If you show up empty-handed, intellectually speaking, you are being a social parasite. The core message of Chapter 25 is that your network is a reflection of your substance. If you want to upgrade your network, to trade up, you must upgrade yourself. You must become the kind of person that fascinating people want to talk to. Growth, ultimately, is the engine of connection. If you are not growing, you are shrinking. Chapter 26. Build your brand. In the corporate world of the 20th century, the company was the brand. You were merely an employee, a cog in the machine. Your identity was IBM, or General Motors, or General Electric. Keith Ferrazzi declares that era dead. In Chapter 26, he adopts the philosophy of management guru Tom Peters to deliver a critical message. You are the CEO of your own life. You are Me Inc. Whether you are a freelancer, a middle manager, or a student, you must view yourself as a brand in a competitive marketplace. A brand is not a logo. A brand is a promise. It is a shorthand for what people can expect from you. When someone hears your name, a set of adjectives should immediately spring to their mind. Reliable, creative, connector, closer. If no adjectives come to mind, or worse, if the adjectives are lazy, disorganized, or average, then your brand is failing. Ferrazzi lays out the architecture for constructing a powerful personal brand from scratch.
Step 1. The brand audit. Before you can build, you must assess the foundation. Ferrazzi suggests a painful but necessary exercise. Ask people what they think of you. Ask your friends, your colleagues, and even your boss. What are 3 words you would use to describe me? What is my greatest strength? What is my greatest weakness? You need to identify the gap between how you think you are perceived and how you are actually perceived. That gap is where your work begins. Step 2. Define the value proposition. What is it that you do better than anyone else? Ferrazzi warns against being a generalist. I'm a hard worker is not a brand, it's the bare minimum. I am the best forensic accountant for tech startups in crisis is a brand. You must carve out a niche. You must identify what makes you distinct, relevant, and compelling. This is your unique selling proposition, USP. Step 3. Craft the message. Once you know your value, you must be able to articulate it in 15 seconds or less. This is often called the elevator pitch, but Ferrazzi prefers to call it a personal branding message. It shouldn't sound rehearsed or robotic. It should be a natural explanation of who you are and how you add value. Instead of saying, I work in sales, say, I help companies accelerate their revenue growth by opening up new markets. One is a job description. The other is a value promise. Step 4. Packaging the brand. Ferrazzi addresses the visual and aesthetic components of your brand. While substance is primary, style counts. Humans are visual creatures. Dress. Does your wardrobe reflect the position you want or the position you have? Ferrazzi advises dressing for the job you want. If you want to be taken seriously as an executive, stop dressing like an intern. The digital footprint. We discussed this in Section 4, but here it is about consistency. Your LinkedIn profile, your email signature, and your resume must all tell the same story.
They should look professional and unified. The artifacts. Do you have business cards? Are they high quality? When you send a note, is the stationery nice? These small physical touchpoints reinforce the perception of quality. Step 5. Broadcast the brand. A brand that no one knows about is not a brand, it is a secret. You must become your own PR department. This leads into the next chapter, but the foundational principle here is that you cannot be shy about your accomplishments. Ferrazzi emphasizes that self-promotion, done correctly, is not arrogance. It is informing the market of your utility. If you hide your light under a bushel, you are depriving the world of your talent. Step 6. Consistency and reliability. This is the most critical point. A brand is a trust mark. If you brand yourself as the punctual, reliable project manager, and you show up late twice, you have destroyed your brand equity. Ferrazzi insists that you must protect your brand with your life. You must deliver on your promise every single time. One failure can undo years of building. He concludes the chapter by reminding us that in the free agent economy, job security is an illusion. The only true security is a strong personal brand. If your company folds tomorrow, your brand is the parachute that allows you to land safely and launch your next venture. You are the product. Market yourself accordingly. Narrator, Chapter 27. Broadcast your brand. We have defined the product, you. Now we must take that product to market. Keith Ferrazzi opens Chapter 27 by dismantling a cherished ideal of the humble worker, the belief that good work speaks for itself. Ferrazzi argues that this is a lie. Good work often sits quietly in a filing cabinet, unnoticed and unrewarded, while the person who knows how to shout about their mediocre work gets the promotion. In a noisy world, competence is not enough. You need visibility. You need to broadcast your signal. If Chapter 26 was about manufacturing the brand, Chapter 27 is about distribution. You must become your own public relations agency. Ferrazzi details 3 specific, high-leverage channels for broadcasting your brand to the world: writing, speaking, and leading. First, the power of the pen. Ferrazzi asserts that writing is the most accessible path to expert status. You do not need anyone's permission to write. You can write an op-ed for your local paper. You can write a white paper for your industry. You can write an article for a trade magazine. When you publish, you are not just sharing information,
you are claiming territory. You are saying, I own this topic. Ferrazzi advises that you do not need to be Hemingway. You just need to have a clear, useful perspective. He suggests reaching out to editors of niche newsletters and magazines. They are often desperate for content. If you offer them a well-researched article for free, they will likely print it. And once it is in print, it is a credential. You can send that article to clients, prospects, and bosses. It is physical proof of your expertise. Second, the power of the podium. Public speaking is the fastest way to build credibility. The moment you step onto a stage, even if it is a small stage at a local Rotary Club, the audience subconsciously grants you authority. You are the teacher, they are the students. Ferrazzi encourages you to start small. Speak at team meetings, speak at local community colleges, speak at industry breakout sessions. He introduces the moderator strategy. If you are not yet famous enough to be a keynote speaker, volunteer to be the moderator of a panel. This is a genius move. As a moderator, you get to sit on stage with the experts. You get to ask the questions. You get your photo taken with them. You are visually associated with the heavy hitters, and by osmosis, their status transfers to you. It is high visibility with low pressure. Third, the power of the organization. Ferrazzi suggests getting involved in nonprofits or industry associations, but with a specific caveat. Do not just be a member, be a leader. Sitting in the back of the room at the annual meeting does nothing for your brand. But if you run the fundraising committee, or if you organize the annual conference, you become a central node. You have a legitimate reason to call anyone in the industry. Hi, I'm the chair of the conference committee, and I'd like to invite you to speak. This gives you leverage. It gives you a platform to broadcast your organizational skills and your commitment to the community. The press strategy. Ferrazzi also touches on how to work with the media. He advises that you should make a journalist's job easy. If you want to be in the news, you have to be newsworthy. You have to package your story. Don't just call a reporter and say, write about me. Call them and say, I see you cover the real estate market. I have some data on a new trend in downtown rentals that contradicts the current narrative. You are giving them a scoop. You are being a resource. And once you get that first press clip, you merchandise it. You frame it. You put it on your website. You send it to your mother. You use it to get the next press clip. Ferrazzi acknowledges that this self-promotion feels uncomfortable to many. It feels boastful. He reframes it. It is not boasting if it is true, and it is not annoying if it is valuable. If you have a solution that can help people, you have a moral obligation to let them know you have it. Broadcasting your brand is simply the act of letting the market know that you are open for business and ready to serve. The chapter concludes with the concept of the buzz. Buzz is that intangible energy that surrounds a rising star. It is when people start talking about you when you aren't there. By consistently writing, speaking, and leading, you generate this buzz. You become the name on everyone's lips.
And that is when the opportunities start chasing you. Narrator Chapter 28. Getting Close to Power. We have discussed building a network of peers, and we have discussed finding mentors. Now, Keith Ferrazzi addresses the most intimidating frontier for any networker: the celebrity, the politician, the Fortune 500 CEO, the billionaire. Ferrazzi calls these individuals the power players. They inhabit a stratosphere that seems completely inaccessible to the average person. They fly on private jets. They live in gated communities, and they are surrounded by layers of security and handlers. In Chapter 28, Ferrazzi demystifies the aura of power. He argues that getting close to power is not impossible. It just requires a different set of rules. The first rule is psychological. Demythologize the human. Ferrazzi observes that most people, when they encounter a famous person, lose their minds. They become fawning, nervous sycophants. They ask for autographs. They stare. This behavior immediately disqualifies you from their inner circle. Power players are exhausted by fans. They are desperate for normalcy. They crave authentic conversation with people who are not intimidated by them. To get close to power, you must treat them with respect, but never with reverence. You must speak to them as an equal, even if your bank accounts are vastly different. The second rule is tactical. Find the neutral ground. You cannot just call Bill Gates.
but you can be in the same room as him if you identify where he spends his off time. Ferrazzi identifies the 3 environments where power players are most accessible. Golf courses, the classic boardroom on grass. Charity events and non-profit boards. This is the most effective entry point. Powerful people are often obsessed with their legacy. They sit on the boards of museums, orchestras, and humanitarian organizations.
Ferrazzi advises that if you want to meet the movers and shakers of your city, do not go to the nightclubs. Go to the opera board. Volunteer for the fundraising committee. When you are working side by side on a cause, the social hierarchy flattens. You are just 2 people trying to raise money for a hospital. Conferences, the green room. We discussed being a conference commando, but getting close to power often means getting backstage. The third rule is strategic. Become an insider before you are inside. Ferrazzi shares a crucial insight about the ecosystem of power. Powerful people rarely make new friends outside of their existing circles. They rely on trust brokers, people they already know who vouch for newcomers. To get to the CEO, you might first need to befriend their favorite political fundraiser, their PR agent, or their golf pro. You circle the target. You build trust with the people surrounding the power, and eventually you are pulled into the center by gravity. The fourth rule, the art of the value add. This is the question everyone asks. What can I possibly offer to a billionaire who has everything? Ferrazzi answers, you offer them what they can't buy. Loyalty. True loyalty is rare at the top. Discretion. If you ever leak a private conversation with a power player to the press or your friends, you are finished forever. The currency of the powerful is privacy. Truth. Everyone lies to powerful people. They kiss the ring. If you are the person who politely but firmly tells the emperor he has no clothes, if you give them honest, unvarnished feedback, they will respect you. They will come to rely on you as a reality check. New worlds. Often, powerful people are trapped in their own industry bubbles. If you can bring them fresh ideas from the world of art or technology or youth culture, you become their window to the new. Ferrazzi concludes with a warning about hubris, which we will explore further in Chapter 30.
Getting close to power is intoxicating. It is easy to let it go to your head. It is easy to become a name dropper. Ferrazzi insists that you must remain grounded. You are there to serve the relationship, not to exploit it for social clout. If you treat power players like trophies, they will discard you. If you treat them like human beings, they might just invite you to dinner. Narrator, Chapter 29. Build it and they will come. This chapter is the culmination of the giving back philosophy. Keith Ferrazzi posits that the ultimate form of networking is not attending events, but creating them. It is not joining a club, but building an organization. In Build It and They Will Come, Ferrazzi shifts the focus from personal advancement to community leadership. He argues that there is a profound hunger in the world for leadership, for people who are willing to stand up and organize others around a shared purpose. When you become the architect of a community, you no longer have to worry about networking. The network revolves around you. Ferrazzi details the power of creating clubs, conferences, and organizations. He shares the story of his own Big Green Dinners and the Yaya Sisterhood established by his friends. These were not random parties, they were institutions. They had rules, they had rituals, and they had a mission. Here is the blueprint for building your own empire of connection.
1. Identify a void. Look around your industry or your social circle. What is missing? Is there no space for young female executives to mentor each other? Is there no forum for discussing the ethical implications of AI? Is there no casual happy hour for startup founders in your neighborhood? Most people see a void and complain. The leader sees a void and fills it. 2. The value of exclusivity. Ferrazzi touches on a delicate paradox. To build a desirable community, you must have barriers to entry. If everyone is invited, no one feels special. This doesn't mean being mean or elitist for the sake of it. It means curating the quality of the group. You want people who are committed, talented, and generous. By setting a high bar for membership, you increase the value of the network for everyone inside it. 3. The content is the glue. A community cannot just be about hanging out. It needs a purpose. It needs content. Ferrazzi advises bringing in speakers, organizing debates, or setting specific themes for each gathering. The intellectual stimulation provides the excuse for busy people to clear their calendars. 4. The benevolent dictator model. In the early stages of building a community, democracy doesn't work. You need to be the driver. You pick the venue. You pick the date. You pick the invite list. You must have the energy to push the rock up the hill until it gains its own momentum. You are the host, the secretary, and the janitor. But as the group grows, you must transition. You must empower others to take ownership. You create committees. You rotate leadership. This ensures the organization survives even if you step back. 5. The ripple effect. Ferrazzi emphasizes that the goal of these organizations should be larger than just networking. It should be about impact. Can the group raise money for a scholarship? Can the group publish a white paper? Can the group mentor the next generation?
When a community turns its energy outward to help the world, the bonds between the members deepen significantly. They are no longer just drinking buddies, they are comrades in a cause. Ferrazzi concludes this chapter with a challenge to your legacy. Most people leave behind a resume. The superconnectors leave behind institutions. They leave behind systems that continue to connect people long after they are gone. If you build a platform that allows others to shine, you will never lack for allies. You become the stage upon which others perform, and in doing so, you become essential. Narrator, Chapter 30. Never give in to hubris. We are nearing the summit of our journey. By now, if you have followed the mindset and the skill set, if you have built your brand and connected with connectors, you are likely experiencing success. The phone is ringing, the invitations are flowing, you are becoming a person of influence. Keith Ferrazzi stops us here to issue a critical warning. This is the moment where most people sabotage themselves. The enemy is no longer obscurity. The enemy is hubris. Hubris is an ancient Greek word for dangerous overconfidence. In Greek tragedy, it is the flaw that causes the hero to challenge the gods, leading to their inevitable destruction. In the modern business world, it is the flaw that causes the successful networker to believe they are untouchable. Ferrazzi opens this chapter by acknowledging the intoxicating nature of access. When you are suddenly rubbing shoulders with CEOs, flying on private jets, or seeing your name in the press, your ego begins to inflate. You start to believe your own press release. You start to think you are better than the people who helped you get there. This is the beginning of the end. Ferrazzi identifies the symptoms of networking hubris. First, you stop doing the homework. You think you can wing it. You walk into meetings unprepared because you assume your reputation is enough. Second, you stop returning calls.
You start big-timing people. You ignore the little people, the assistants, the juniors, the old friends, because you are chasing bigger prey. Third, you become a talker, not a listener. You fall in love with the sound of your own voice. You interrupt. You pontificate. Ferrazzi argues that arrogance is the fastest way to bankrupt your social capital. Relationships are built on a foundation of mutual respect. When you act with hubris, you signal that you no longer respect the other person. You signal that you believe the relationship is a hierarchy, and you are at the top. The moment people sense this, they turn on you. The very network that lifted you up will step aside and let you fall. And there is no delight greater than the delight the public takes in the fall of an arrogant man. So how do you inoculate yourself against this disease? Ferrazzi prescribes a regimen of calculated humility. 1. The reality check. You must surround yourself with people who knew you when. You need old friends, family members, or a spouse who is not impressed by your title. You need people who will tell you the truth, who will tell you when you are being a jerk, and who will keep your feet on the ground. Ferrazzi talks about the importance of returning to his roots in Pennsylvania to remember where he came from. 2. Service over status. You must constantly remind yourself that your network is a vehicle for service, not a throne. When you feel your ego swelling, go do something for someone who can do absolutely nothing for you. Mentor a student, volunteer at a soup kitchen, help a stranger. This resets your perspective. It reminds you that you are a servant of the community,
not its master. 3. Gratitude. Ferrazzi emphasizes the daily practice of gratitude. You did not get here alone. You stood on the shoulders of giants, mentors, and friends. If you ever start thinking you are a self-made man, reread Chapter 1. Acknowledge your debts.
4. The double check. Before you send an email or make a call, check your tone. Is it demanding? Is it dismissive? Is it entitled? Ferrazzi advises reading your communications through the eyes of the recipient. If there is even a hint of arrogance, delete it and rewrite it. The lesson of Chapter 30 is that charm and humility are renewable resources, but arrogance is a toxin. You can be the smartest, most connected person in the room, but if you lose your humility, you lose your connection to humanity. True power is not forcing people to listen to you. True power is when people want to listen to you because they know you care about them. Stay humble or stumble. Narrator, Chapter 31. Find mentors, find mentees, repeat. We have arrived at the final chapter of the main text. Fittingly, Keith Ferrazzi closes the loop on the entire networking philosophy. Throughout the book, we have discussed how to get things, how to get access, how to get jobs, how to get influence. But Chapter 31 argues that the ecosystem only survives if you are giving as much as you are taking. The lifeblood of a healthy network is the flow of wisdom. Ferrazzi presents mentorship not as a charitable act, but as a dual engine for growth. Part 1. Finding mentors. Ferrazzi reiterates that no one succeeds alone. The self-made man is a myth. Every great performer, from Mozart to Tiger Woods, had a teacher. He advises you to be aggressive in seeking mentorship. Do not wait for a wise elder to tap you on the shoulder. You must audition for the role of the apprentice. The ask, be specific. Do not say, "Will you be my mentor?" That is vague and heavy. Say, "I admire your expertise in negotiation. Could I buy you coffee for 20 minutes to ask 3 specific questions about your last deal?" The ROI, you must make the mentorship rewarding for the mentor. They are busy.
You must pay them back with gratitude, with loyalty, and by actually applying their advice. There is nothing more frustrating for a mentor than a student who listens but does not act. Part 2. Finding mentees. This is where Ferrazzi flips the script. He argues that you should not wait until you are a CEO to start mentoring. You should start now. If you are 25, mentor a 20-year-old. If you are a college senior, mentor a freshman. Why? Because teaching helps you learn. When you have to articulate your principles to someone else, you clarify them for yourself. Furthermore, mentees keep you young. They keep you connected to the zeitgeist, the spirit of the times. They know the new technologies, the new slang, and the new trends that you are too busy to notice. Part 3. Reverse mentoring. Ferrazzi introduces a concept that was revolutionary at the time, reverse mentoring. In the digital age, wisdom does not always flow downhill from age to youth. Sometimes it flows uphill. The CEO knows strategy, but the intern knows social media. The VP knows politics, but the junior associate knows crypto. Ferrazzi encourages you to find mentors who are younger and structurally below you. Treat them with the same respect you treat the chairman of the board. Ask them, "What am I missing? How do you see the world?" This prevents you from becoming a dinosaur. The cycle of reciprocity. The chapter concludes with the image of a great chain. You are a link in that chain. You take the hand of the person ahead of you, and you extend your hand to the person behind you. If you break this chain, if you take mentorship but refuse to give it, you become a dead end. You become a black hole in the network, absorbing light but emitting none. But if you keep the flow moving, you create a legacy. You are not just building a career, you are building a lineage. Ferrazzi leaves us with this final thought on the mechanics of connection. Relationships are like muscles.
If you use them, they grow stronger. If you neglect them, they atrophy. And the best exercise for any relationship is the transfer of knowledge. This concludes the instructional chapters of Never Eat Alone. We now move to the conclusion, where Ferrazzi summarizes the soul of the book. Narrator. Conclusion. We have reached the end of Never Eat Alone. Over the course of 31 chapters, Keith Ferrazzi has given us a tactical manual.
We have learned how to create a mindset, how to develop a skill set, how to turn connections into compatriots, how to leverage the digital age, and how to build a brand that matters. But in these final pages, Ferrazzi strips away the tactics. He puts aside the contact management software, the conference strategies, and the dinner party logistics to leave us with a single resounding message about the why. The ultimate conclusion of the book is that networking is a terrible word. It implies a net. It implies work. It implies catching people, using them, and tallying the score. Ferrazzi argues that if you have read this book solely to get a bigger raise or a better job title, you have missed the point. Those things are side effects. They are the dividends, not the principle. The true goal of this philosophy is generosity. Business is not a spiral transaction of goods and services. Business is a human enterprise. It is a collection of people trying to solve problems, trying to feed their families, and trying to find meaning. Ferrazzi reminds us that we are social animals. We were not designed to survive alone, let alone succeed alone. The myth of the rugged individualist is just that, a myth. It is a lonely, brittle existence. The real power lies in interdependence. When you commit to the principles of this book, you are committing to a life of openness. You are choosing to be the person who connects the dots. You are choosing to be the person who gives first.
You are choosing to be the person who invites the lonely stranger to the table so they don't have to eat alone. Ferrazzi writes that, in the end, your career will not be measured by the balance in your bank account, but by the breadth and depth of your relationships. Did you help others succeed? Did you lift people up? Did you matter to them? The secret to networking is not a better elevator pitch. The secret is to make other people more successful. If you dedicate your life to the success of others, your own success becomes inevitable. It is a mathematical certainty of the social universe. He closes with a vision of a relationship economy, a world where social capital is as tangible and valuable as financial capital. In this economy, the currency is trust, and the bank is your reputation. So, as you close this book or finish this summary, the challenge is simple. Don't wait. Pick up the phone, send the email, invite someone to lunch. Reach out, not because you need something, but because you have something to give. Because in the end, the only thing that truly matters is people. This concludes the summary of Never Eat Alone by Keith Ferrazzi.